Chapter 1060. Waiting was a very worrisome thing, especially when one was waiting for death. The security within the holy capital had already reached a perfect level. In such an average-sized city, there were already close to 30 billion experts from the surface races gathered. Among them, the weakest was at the spiritual stage. This force could not be said to be weak. However, the enemy they faced was even stronger. More than 100 billion of the endless race army occupied every inch of space and every corner outside the city. Moreover, the other party's Hall of Fame members exceeded half of the surface races. Everyone was on tenterhooks as they waited for the other side's attack to begin. With such a huge gap in strength, even the most perfect defensive system was nothing more than a decoration. They could only hope that the other side would suddenly retreat because of some unexpected event, such as Great Emperor Extreme Heaven suddenly dying. However, this kind of extravagant hope was obviously unrealistic. After the holy capital was trapped for 3 months, the attack of the endless race finally began. At night, outside the holy capital, the sentries were on duty in the sentry post, observing the movements of the endless race. No one was willing to be the sentries because once the endless race attacked, the sentries would definitely die. However, someone still had to come. Some divine perception stage cannon fodder took turns to guard here. Everyone hoped that they would not be attacked by the enemy when they were on duty. Inside the sentry post, the sentries who were praying suddenly felt themselves being jolted. What's going on? Am I sitting on a spring? The soldiers poked their heads out of the city and were instantly terrified. In the distance, the endless race army that covered the sky and the sun was already in an irregular formation, surging from all directions. They're here! They're here! This day has finally come. Whoosh! A shining golden arrow pierced through the air and pierced the throat of the sentries. This divine perception stage sentries were still dutiful. When they were shot, they used the last of their strength to press the alarm button in the sentry post. The shrill alarm resounded through the sky above the holy capital. The entire holy capital was like a pot of boiling water that began to overflow. The teams that had already done countless drills began to board their posts, pick up their weapons, and prepare to fight. However, everyone's heart was heavy, and their faces were so ugly that it was as if their mothers had died. This was a war that was almost certain to be lost. Surrendering was an extravagant hope. Now, the only thing everyone hoped for was to kill as many enemies as possible before they died. This way, the enemy might have to retreat due to heavy casualties. Although this hope was very slim, it was everyone's only chance. When the endless races saw that they had been exposed, they did not intend to hide anymore. One by one, the warriors raised their hands and threw flash bombs that condensed light elements into the air, forming huge lights. The holy capital, which was supposed to be at night, suddenly became brighter than during the day. There was not a single surface race outside the holy capital. Everyone was hiding in the city, waiting for the moment to erupt. Amidst their anxiety, countless soldiers from different races arrived at the city gates. Xidagarba stood in front of the group in high spirits. Beside him was his most powerful helper, Dong Shuahan. After witnessing Dong Shuahan's super combat power, Xidagarba's discrimination against these Hall of the Exalted members completely disappeared. He dare not say for others, but Dong Shuahan's strength was definitely comparable to a complete saint. However, in this first battle, he did not intend to fight Dong Shuahan. He wanted to slowly kill these trash from the surface races and make them fall into hell. Everyone get ready. We'll launch an attack in 1 minute. Let's show the surface races that are holed up in the city. Let's show those fellows in the dimensional universe how we, the endless races, kill them all and rule the land again. Kill, kill, kill. The army of the endless races responded positively, their voices resounding through the sky. Looking at the time, Xidagarba waved his hand. Attack! Amidst waves of roars, the attack of the endless races began. Unlike ordinary armies that organized attacks step by step, the warriors' attack method was simpler and more violent. Everyone rose into the air like raindrops, diving down from all directions towards the holy capital. The Holy Capital had a city defense system, which was a huge energy shield. This shield protected the Holy Capital from external attacks, but the shield needed to be powered by God stones. If the supply of God stones was insufficient, the shield would be broken and the enemy would be able to enter the city directly. Therefore, in the first wave of attack, the endless races had to break the opponent's energy shield. The shield was also very magical. The people inside could attack the outside, but the people outside could not. This was also an advantage of the defensive side. At this moment, the surface races launched a fierce counterattack. Countless flying swords, treasures, spiritual power, and other attacks crazily bombarded the outside. The entire Holy Capital was like a huge sea urchin at this moment. This wave of attacks did cause a lot of damage to the endless races. The attackers rolled down like dumplings, and corpses instantly piled up like mountains. Every second, tens of thousands of people died outside the Holy Capital. However, this did not scare off the people of the endless races. Since the battle had already reached this stage, this number of casualties was something everyone could expect. Every warrior who rushed to the energy shield would launch their fiercest attacks, hitting the shield fiercely. Every time it was attacked, the light of the shield would dim a little. Although the change was very slow, it was indeed changing. Tens of millions of enemies fell in an instant, and the energy of the energy shield was reduced by half. Quick, quick, quick! Add God stones. Make sure the shield is not broken. Quick, quick! Those who have exhausted their star power, come down quickly. Reserve team, get ready to go. Kill as many enemies as possible. Don't kill. A few people. This space octopus monster's lethality is too strong, and it has no obvious weakness. It's too damaging to the shield. Hurry up and kill it. There were shouts everywhere, and the divine stones in the storage were once again added to the operating formation of the shield. As long as the shield was not broken, the Holy Capital was safe. However, the consumption of the divine stones for the shield was simply too great. Under the crazy attacks of the enemy, hundreds of thousands of divine stones were consumed every second. If this continued, no matter how many divine stones there were, it would not be enough. After throwing down 1 billion corpses, the enemy did not retreat. Instead, the second wave of attacks came again. This time, there were few enemies in the divine realm. The attacking enemies were mainly in the divine realm, and there were even many divine stones and demigod experts behind them. Even if the divine stones and demigods of the endless races died in battle, someone would immediately collect their divine stones. The races on the ground could not replenish their divine stones during the war. The second wave of attacks was even more violent than the first wave. The shield was soon in danger, and the divine stones in the storage were consumed wave after wave. After another battle, more than 1 billion corpses were left behind. The second wave of attacks of the endless races was repelled. However, this did not affect anything at all. The endless races were still endless. The third wave of attacks came again, not giving the races on the ground any time to catch their breath. The warriors of the monster race, the demon race, the ghost race, and the monster race went into battle one after another. Batches of warriors of the ground races were quickly exhausted of their star power. Some were even exhausted and were carried down. The next wave took their place. After more than a dozen waves of attacks, the endless races had lost more than 10 billion people. The divine stones in the Holy Capital storage were finally exhausted. Joshuan immediately issued an order. Everyone had a hand over their divine stones. Otherwise, the Holy Capital would be destroyed and everyone would die together. Although some people were unwilling to hand over their wealth, at this moment of life and death, no one dared to hide anything. They all handed over their divine stones. With a new batch of divine stones, the protective shield of the Holy Capital stabilized again. Unfortunately, this was only temporary. After more than a dozen rounds of destruction, the energy of a shield was finally close to exhaustion. At this time, no one had any divine stones in their hands. How long can the divine stones last? Commander-in-Chief, the divine stones can only withstand less than 2 waves of attacks. Jushuan closed his eyes slightly. There was no other way. Although they relied on the shield to kill 30 billion enemies, the number of enemies was still as high as 80 to 90 billion. They did not suffer any fundamental damage. Could it be that he wanted the martial artist to hand over the divine stones in his god world? That was impossible. No warrior would agree to such a thing. It was equivalent to suicide. At this point, the only way was to fight in the streets. This was also their last resistance. Jushuan took a deep breath and said to the warriors of the Hall of the Exalted who were ready to fight, "Everyone, this is the final moment. Behind us is the home of our people. Again, if you want to attack the ground, then you have to step over my dead body. Are you ready?" Everyone nodded in unison. This battle was a success or death. Who still has a warrior dimensional universe wandering outside? Contact them immediately. Let them fight to the death from the rear. This is the final moment. Jushuan had no other choice. At this time, they had to do as much as they could. Although those restraints could not be counted on, it was good to kill one more enemy. Everyone began to contact their friends to see who was still alive. Beside Jushuan, Bai Yunyin checked his friends' list. Looking at it, Bai Yunyin suddenly froze. This is impossible. Bai Yunyin rubbed his eyes. When he looked carefully, he found that Lin Zhun's dimensional universe in the dimensional universe had darkened. However, he clearly saw that Lin Zhun's dimensional universe was in a login state. Could it be that he was seeing things? Illusion. I must be hallucinating. Seeing that there was no movement and that the battle at the front was tense, Bai Yunyin could only close the dimensional universe. He did not dare to tell anyone about this. Otherwise, others would definitely laugh at him. Holding their weapons, Bai Yunyin and the other Hall of the Exalted members also began to climb the city wall, preparing for the final battle. At the rear of the endless race, the warriors of the ground races who were still wandering outside also appeared from various places and launched the final charge toward the army behind the endless race. Chapter 1061. Lin Zhun's God Realm was undergoing an earth-shattering change. The black hole was like a huge hole swallowing all the energy around it. Without the energy, the continent in the God Realm started to reform. This was the last change in the God Realm. With the World Stone as the center, a ray of light filled with vitality flashed past. Mountains rose and oceans gathered. The long line of the continent extended endlessly. Millions of kilometers, tens of millions of kilometers, billions of kilometers spread outwards. Lin Zhun's main body sat cross-legged under the star fruit tree, feeling the changes in the World Stone. The World Stone had stopped evolving. Lin Zhun did not reach the peak of the God Realm. He was still at the late stage of the God Realm. To reach the peak of the God Realm from the late stage of the God Realm, the amount of energy required was huge. Lin Zhun did not expect that he would need to consume so much energy. Perhaps the consumption of ordinary martial artists was very small, but Lin Zhun's foundation was too high and too solid. In the future of his cultivation process, his needs would increase exponentially. The last bit of energy only increased Lin Zhun's star power by a little. This time, it coincidentally reached the level of 10 billion. 10 billion star power was the minimum requirement to become a lower god. It was different from the advancement of warriors in other realms. Warriors in other realms rarely advanced with the minimum requirement. They would more or less surpass it. However, there were many lower gods who did so. Those who were at the peak of the god realm and did not have the ability to break through would look for god crystals and advance to god with the minimum requirement. Almost all of those who had advanced at this level had 10 billion astral powers. Because they did not have the ability to reach that level, they would only reach the minimum requirement after advancing. In this way, they could only rely on god crystals to advance to the middle god realm. At that time, they would still have to reach the minimum requirement. Although these gods were the bottom of the gods, they were still sought after by countless people. When Lin Zhun's star power reached 10 billion, he knew that he had the ability to fight against some lower gods. As for perfect gods, they should be weaker than him. The lower limit for a deity was 10 billion, while the upper limit for a perfected expert was 10 billion. If a demigod could cultivate to perfection and reach 10 billion stars, then he would still have the chance to become a god. Moreover, he would have to break through and become a god on his own. However, this was undoubtedly very, very difficult. Lin Jun's star power finally stopped growing. If he could break through to the peak of Divine Stone, then his star power would increase a little, but for now, it was enough for Lin Jun. 10 billion star power was already much higher than when he usually activated his godly domain. He was in the final stages of stabilizing his realm. From the peak of the god realm to the late stage of the god realm, this huge leap made Lin Jun have to adapt to many things. With the increase in his strength, the power of his battle skills had also increased tremendously. Now, other than waiting for the god world in his body to be nurtured, Lin Jun was training in the dimensional arena. From the demigod stage, to the regal stage, to the hall of the exalted stage, and then to the perfection stage. One after another, incomparably powerful opponents appeared and fought with Lin Jun in the virtual world. The first to appear was a demigod. Lin Jun already felt no pressure when fighting against ordinary demigods. However, he still wanted to test the gap between him and ordinary demigods. However, when a demigod opponent with a blurry face appeared, Lin Jun was disappointed. This was because the demigods in front of him were too weak. He had asked Crazy to set the opponents according to the average strength of ordinary demigods. However, this strength he could not bear to watch. From 5 billion stars to 10 billion stars, this leap was not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. The current Lin Jun could instantly kill 10 Lin Juns before his breakthrough. As for the demigods that he looked down on previously, Lin Jun killed them with a divine might of destiny. Shaking his head slightly, the next to appear was an emperor powerhouse. He glanced at him and killed him again with a divine might of destiny. The next to appear was a Hall of Famer. This virtual Hall of Famer was slightly weaker than Bai Yunyan. If it was in the past, Lin Jun would have to use some means to deal with him. However, this time, Lin Jun's divine might of destiny had killed him 3 times in a row. If I have any shortcoming now, it would be my mind power. Due to my breakthrough for so long, I haven't had time to cultivate my mind power. Now that my realm is stable, I can't become a god for the time being. I can just cultivate slowly. I should find a chance to break through to the Emerald Ray level. The Azure Peak spiritual power was enough to protect himself against those below the gods. Even if he was at the perfection level, his spiritual power would only be at the Azure Peak spiritual power. There are many people at this level, but no one could break through to the Emerald Ray. Emerald Ray level of mind power was a strength that only gods had. However, for the current Lin Jun, it was not impossible for him to achieve it. It was just that it would be very difficult. The next opponent was a perfect level. The lower limit of the consummate level was 7. 5 billion star power. All consummate experts had between 7, 5 billion and 10 billion star power. Lin Jun did not use divine might of destiny this time. Instead, he fought head-on. This time, Lin Jun mainly wanted to familiarize himself with the martial arts. He did not pay attention to killing quickly and fighting slowly. This perfect level expert, who was close to 8, 5 billion stars, fell under Lin Jun's spear in the end. However, the formation of the celestial world was still not complete. Lin Jun summoned another perfect level expert. Each time, Lin Jun summoned a different perfect level expert. Some used a sword, some used an astral beast, and some used a telekinesis master. Sometimes, Lin Jun would even lose. This was because he did not want to use his star power to crush his opponent. Instead, he wanted to familiarize himself with the martial arts. In the first few battles, Lin Jun even lost a few battles. However, in the following battles, Lin Jun did not lose a single battle until the formation of the celestial world was complete. With a rumbling sound in his body, a halo of light enveloped Lin Jun's entire inner world. The celestial world was finally stable. With the world stone and astral fruit tree as the center, the diameter of the continent reached 10 light years. A continent that was 10 light years was an incomparably huge world. Even the solar system was only 0. 0.003 light years in diameter. If it fell on Lin Jun's continent, it would not even cause a splash. On the continent, there were mountains and oceans, wind and rain, thunder and lightning. This was a perfect new world. In the sky, 7 huge stars illuminated every corner of the continent. Some rose in the east and set in the west. Some rose in the south and set in the north. Day and night alternated. Lin Jun's mind power swept across the continent. He was overjoyed. This was the world in his body. It was a world that could accommodate billions of people. As soon as this world appeared, it began to give birth to basic life. Perhaps one day, this would become a world full of vitality and give birth to countless civilizations. However, that was a matter for the future. Now that Lin Jun had completed his breakthrough, it was about time for him to go out. After calming down, Lin Jun opened the dimensional universe. Oh, the battle has reached such a dangerous level. After seeing the dimensional universe, Lin Jun immediately frowned slightly. He originally thought that even if he had fallen, the two sides would still be in a stalemate in the Celestial River. However, he never expected that Augustine's betrayal would cause the situation to collapse. The surface races were defeated in the Celestial River and were trapped in the Holy Capital. Even if they were trapped in the Holy Capital, they would not be able to hold on much longer. The future of a martial artist is incomparably long. War should not be the main theme of martial artists. It will only bring endless harm and pain. There is an unwritten agreement between the gods not to interfere in the war between martial artists below the god level. Then, if I interfere, no one can say anything about it. Lin Jun stood up and stepped out of his god realm. After leaving the god realm, Lin Jun was surrounded by the celestial river that was filled with fog. This was the place where he had escaped into the god realm. However, the surroundings were completely empty. There was a faint smell of blood in the air. Several months had passed, but this place was still the same. It could be seen how fierce the battle was. Lin Jun raised his leg and used the Luotian escape technique. He crossed millions of kilometers in a single step. In a moment, Lin Jun had already arrived outside the west gate of the Holy Capital. The person in charge of attacking the west gate of the Endless Race was Lu Gala. The original 9 battle zones had been cancelled. Currently, the ones attacking the 4 gates of the Holy Capital were all led by perfect stage powerhouses. There were 5 perfect stage powerhouses from the Endless Race participating in the battle. They were the Commander-in-Chief Xidagarba, followed by Alcade, Lu Gala, Burning Heaven, and Titan King. Xidagarba and Dong Xuan were now in charge of overall affairs, while Alcade and the other 3 were in charge of attacking the 4 gates. The mission given by Xidagarba was very clear. Whoever could open the protective shield first and take down the city gate would be the one with the greatest credit. He would report to the Ju Tian Great Emperor to give this person a great reward. The reward was very tempting. It might be the most anticipated opportunity for a perfect stage powerhouse to advance to the god level. The Endless Race had a secret technique that could help a perfect stage powerhouse break through. However, the price was very high, so they wouldn't easily give it away. This time, the Ju Tian Great Emperor had placed a heavy bet. As long as they won the battle, apart from Xidagarba, who would definitely obtain a spot, there would be 2 spots left. Xidagarba would decide who to give them to. So far, Xidagarba hadn't said who these 2 spots would be given to. This made every perfect stage powerhouse very excited. Lu Gala was determined to get this spot. Xidagarba had already said that whoever took down the city gate first would get it, so Lu Gala was tempted. Opposite him, the person guarding the Holy Capital was the perfect stage powerhouse, Shadow Killer. The guards of the 4 gates of the Holy Capital were Jiu Xuan, multi-armed, Shadow Killer, and Xiong Jing. If it were anyone else, Lu Gala might not be confident, but Lu Gala was very confident in Shadow Killer. This was because he was very familiar with Shadow Killer, and the 2 of them were even friends. He was very confident that he could make Shadow Killer betray him again and give up the Holy Capital. Lu Jiaoao was definitely going to get the chance to complete the breakthrough. Chapter 1062. Gala and Shadow Killer quickly came to an agreement. There were 3 places for the endless races. Xidagarba and Gala would each take one, and Shadow Killer would take the remaining one. As long as Shadow Killer could open the city, he could reduce the endless races' losses. Xidagarba felt that it was worth it to exchange this for a place. In order to cover Shadow Killer's actions, the attacks from the other directions were strengthened. The surface races had no choice but to send more people to defend. This way, the West Gate was empty. The conspiracy was in progress. Shadow Killer, who had received a guarantee, was determined to open the city gate. It's not that I'm heartless, but the surface races have no hope. Instead of staying here and waiting for death, it's better to be protected by the endless races, become gods, and enjoy eternal freedom. As for my compatriots, you'll be the sacrificial offerings for me to become gods. Shadow Killer had always been an unscrupulous person. For himself, he would rather betray the world. At the West Gate, among the endless races attacking the city, the people at the back did not have many chances to participate in the battle. There were too many people, and it was impossible for everyone to fight at the same time. They could only wait at the back and hope that the surface races would not be destroyed so quickly. It would be best if they had the chance to enter the city and experience the thrill of killing. Gala was very cautious. He left 5 Hall of the Exalted behind to guard the back. These Hall of the Exalted stayed there mainly to prevent the remnant forces of the surface races from wandering at the back and to ensure that the team would not be in chaos. This method was also very effective. Some people who had survived the battle at the Celestial Realm River had wanted to attack the endless races from the back, but had failed. Among the 5 Hall of the Exalted, there were 4 ancient warriors, and one of them was Red Widow. The 5 of them stayed at the back and watched the battle at the front line hungrily. An ancient warrior said angrily, "Oh, it's so King born to stay here. I really want to rush to the front and show the scum of the surface races how powerful I am. Looks like we won't have the chance. The holy capital is destined to fall. According to the news, it seems that the city will be breached today. It's over. Once the protective shield is broken, the surface races will soon be killed. We can only watch from here." Hearing the complaints of a few ancient martial art practitioners, Red Widow let out a cold snort. "The few of you don't have to pretend to be obedient after getting such a good deal. There is a mission for you to stay behind. If someone were to attack from behind, you still have to count on us to fend them off. Red Widow, your words are too insincere. Who else could there be? Those stragglers are waiting for the battle to end so that they can have a chance to escape. Even if they have a few guts, they wouldn't dare to come over. Besides, with the 5 of us here, only idiots would come over to die." An ancient martial art practitioner shook his head. "Women are timid. Even if you were once in the top 10, there's no way you can compare to us ancient martial art practitioners." Red Widow was also used to being bossy and domineering. After being mocked by these ancient martial art practitioners, she was instantly annoyed. However, it was not good for her to flare up. Looking left and right, Red Widow suddenly pointed to the back. "Who said that no one is coming? Look, isn't there someone coming?" The few ancient martial art practitioners turned their heads and saw a person rapidly approaching them from afar amidst the red smoke and dust. There are really people who aren't afraid of death. That's right. There are always people from the surface races with short-circuited brains. They think that if they charge forward with their lives at the end, they are considered heroes. Who can they save in such a one-on-one battle? It's a pity that after so many years of cultivation, they are going to turn into ashes." The few ancient martial art practitioners did not care about the arrival of a single person. They casually pointed to a few warriors. "The few of you go over and get rid of that person." 4 to 5 divine stone experts and a king-ranked demigod walked out. These people went up to greet him, laughing and joking. The person on the other side gradually walked closer. This person's long hair covered half of his face. He was a late-stage divine stone expert. "Haha, lad. Are you going to sacrifice your life for your race? All right then, let me, the storm beast Karu, end your sad life. You should be glad that you have the chance to become my dinner." A storm demonic wolf from the goblin race walked over casually. He was holding a serrated knife in his hand. Without saying a word, the man stepped forward and raised his hand. Karu, be careful. This guy might have some skills. Don't worry. He's just a late-stage divine stone expert. I, Karu, am a peak-stage divine stone expert. I can squash a dozen people like him to death. The storm demonic wolf Karu opened his bloody mouth and pounced forward. Buzz! This person raised his hand. A sword energy shot out from his palm and slashed forward with lightning speed. He walked past Karu. Karu's body stiffened for about a second. Then, his head slowly fell from his shoulder. This good lad. Not bad. Let's go together. 4 to 5 enemies charged forward together. This person waved his hand again. These people were cut in half at the same time. Only a king-ranked magistrate was left. He stood there trembling in fear. It was not that he did not want to move, but he was completely suppressed by an aura. He could not move at all. The long-haired man waved at him, and a powerful suction force pulled him directly into the man's hand. King-ranked, give me everything you know. The judge finally got a clear look at the man's face, and he muttered a single word. Before he could say the word true, his memory was already searched by Lin Jun. From this magistrate's memory, Lin Jun knew about the arrangement of the countless races' armies in the Westgate area. All right, you're no longer of any use. Die. A ball of starlight exploded from his hand and vaporized this king-ranked magistrate. According to the king-ranked magistrate's memory, Lin Jun's first surprise attack target was the enemy's reserve camp. This was where the strongest reserves for the attack on the Westgate were stored. There were a total of 3 billion Devil Race troops. Originally, Lin Jun wanted to be the first to attack the command post. There were 5 Hall of the Exalted there. However, Lin Jun thought that if he attacked the command post first, he would definitely be surrounded by the enemy's experts. It was better to maximize his gains first. This time, Lin Jun only had one goal in the Holy Capital. He would kill as many as he could. Although he knew that the 5 Hall of the Exalted Spirit Power were locked onto him, Lin Jun did not care. His spirit power was isolated. They did not know who he was. With a bang, as if the air had exploded, Lin Jun disappeared from the spot. In the next moment, Lin Jun had arrived at the enemy's reserve camp. Although it was called a camp, it was actually a gathering place for the 3 billion Devil Race troops. These devils range from divine wills to demigods. Some of the leaders were only king-ranked. To deal with such enemies, Lin Jun did not need to kill them one by one. He immediately summoned the Gale Thunder Wings behind him. After Lin Jun reforged his body, the Gale Thunder Wings had been nourished by the elemental power. They had improved again and reached the level of a superior grade true treasure. With a raise of his hand, the soft weapon appeared. In Lin Jun's hand, it became a 1,000-meter-long sword. That's right, it was a 1,000-meter-long sword. The soft weapon was now a superior grade true treasure, and its length could be extended at will. This sword was only a few millimeters wide and as thin as a cicada's wing. These were not important. What was important was that it had a sharp edge. It was a good sword, a sword that could kill. The sword was 5 millimeters wide and 1,800 meters long. This sword could probably only be used on planes. Holding the hilt in his hand, Lin Jun moved forward. Just as Lin Jun approached, a king-rank powerhouse turned around and noticed Lin Jun. Stop! Advance and you'll die. Bang! A mental attack hit, and the king-rank powerhouse died on the spot. A shrill alarm sounded. In front of Lin Jun's eyes, a small square formation was quickly assembled. According to the rules of the endless races, when facing harassment from the rear, they should try their best to maintain the formation and not attack recklessly to avoid falling into the enemy's ambush. This was because there had been such a precedent before. It had to be said that the speed at which the martial artists gathered was too fast. In the blink of an eye, 30,000 people had gathered in this square formation. 30,000 devils roared in unison, and their aura soared into the sky. Ordinary people would have peed their pants when facing such a formation, but in Lin Jun's eyes, this was really too satisfying. Good posture. Lin Jun shouted and swung his right hand fiercely. Light speed attack. The Heavenly Fire continent was restricted by the formation. People below the level of God couldn't attack at the speed of light. If they wanted to attack at the speed of light, they needed to have 10 billion star power. Lin Jun's star power had reached 10 billion, so he could resist the effect of the formation. In a situation where the speed of light was against an attack that was slower than the speed of light, the result could be imagined. Pooh! A bolt of lightning flashed like a sickle sweeping across a patch of grass. 30,000 heads flew into the sky. 30,000 corpses fell to the ground at the same time. Instantly, the entire reserve camp of the endless races fell silent. Almost everyone who saw this rubbed their eyes at the same time. They didn't even think that their companions were dead. Those who couldn't see clearly thought that they were practicing lying down. But soon, they realized that they weren't lying down. They were being slaughtered. F***CK. What was going on? 30,000 people were slaughtered together. This scene was too spectacular. Before they could react, a nightmare began. The person who killed 30,000 devils with one slash charge forward. Ha ha ha. Bastards of the endless races, Grandpa is here. The tempest wings behind him roared. Lin Jun rose into the sky and instantly accelerated. He held the long sword in his hand horizontally and went straight to the army gathering place on the left. F***CK, the battle techniques. No battle techniques needed. What battle techniques? No battle techniques needed at this time. Only my blade, only my speed, only my hot blood, only your lives. The tempest wings flapped rapidly behind him. Lin Jun flew at the speed of light. His body circled around the reserve camp. He was about 100 meters away from the enemy. The 1,000-meter-long sword flew past like a hurricane in late autumn, sweeping across the grassland. Wherever it passed, the grass would fall with the wind. Originally, there was a kill list in the Heavenly Fire War. Now, the top few on the list had killed more than 100,000 people. But because it had been a long time and the situation was dangerous, no one paid attention to the kill list. But at this time, Lin Jun's kill count began to rise crazily. 30,000, 100,000, 500,000, 1, 8 million, 9 million, 36 million, 700,000, 174,500,000. Chapter 1063. Perhaps the endless races had never suffered such a calamity. They were attacked by an expert who moved at the speed of light. Moreover, this expert held an incredibly long sword. It was as if he was peeling an apple. He easily encircled and annihilated 3 billion people. One person encircled 3 billion people. The sharp sword moved at high speed. As the blade swept past, the crowd fell down in droves. Every second, at least millions or tens of millions of people died. This consumption rate was much faster than the holy capital siege. 3 billion people were like a big apple that was being cut by Lin Jun at high speed. The encirclement was getting smaller and smaller, and the crowd was getting smaller and smaller. In less than 3 minutes, almost half of the 3 billion people were killed. The Hall of the Exalted, who had just been arguing about who had killed a few divine stone demigods, were now all dumbfounded. What had happened? Who had started a massacre at the back? Was it one person or a group of people? Or was it some secret weapon of the surface races that was making a final struggle? Red Widow immediately said, "What's the situation now? We should immediately report to Sir Lu Gala." The few ancient martial art practitioners immediately refuted Red Widow's words. How big is the matter that needs to be reported? Now the front line has reached the most important moment. The holy capital is about to be breached. This is the key to whether Sir Lu Gala and the rest can become gods. No one can disturb them now. We can handle this matter ourselves. That's right. We can only rely on ourselves now. Let's go over and see who can actually reach the sky. A few Hall of the Exalted immediately stood up and headed to the scene of the incident. Red Widow was alone and could only follow along helplessly. In the time it took for them to discuss, Lin Jun had once again expanded the battle results. After the high-speed rotation took down more than 2 billion people, Lin Jun felt that the Hall of the Exalted experts had arrived. However, Lin Jun still did not want to meet them. He swished a few times and crisscrossed among the remaining 1 billion people. Light speed slash. A mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. More than 300 million people fell under Lin Zhun's slash. After that, Lin Zhun did not care about the remaining hundreds of millions of defeated soldiers. He once again rushed to the central army outside the West Gate. When the Hall of the Exalted arrived, they could only see a river of blood flowing towards them. The rivers of blood that were mentioned in the past were all exaggerations. At most, the river would be dyed red by the blood. And this time, blood really flowed like a river. More than 2 billion demons were originally full of vitality, but all of them were cut in half by Lin Zhun without being able to resist. The amount of blood was simply too much. It was no exaggeration to say that the blood river was more than 2 meters deep. It was more than 30 meters wide. Looking at the flowing river of blood and the fact that the survivors couldn't even explain what had happened, they couldn't help but feel a chill run down their spines. Is the god making a move? After a long discussion, an ancient martialist finally decided to report to Lu Gala cautiously that there might be gods joining the battle. However, it was already too late. Before they could come to a conclusion, Lin Zhun had already killed his way into the middle of the army. The so-called middle army was the backup of the attacking troops. When the vanguard troops were tired and needed to be replaced, the middle army would appear. The middle army prepared by the endless races was the army that Lu Gala was prepared to completely take down the holy capital. 10 billion middle army. The 5 billion vanguard troops in front were still fighting. He had already agreed with Shadowthorn that when the vanguard troops withdrew and the middle army attacked, Shadowthorn would remove the protective shield outside the West Gate and let the middle army enter the city. Therefore, the middle army of this wave was definitely an elite force. Standing behind the vanguard, Lu Gala looked back at the dark middle army behind him and felt proud. He was about to succeed. When the middle army entered the city, the remnants of the races on the ground would not be able to resist at all. The holy capital would be taken down in one go, and his mission would be completed. Becoming a god, becoming the hero of the endless races, these wonderful things were about to happen to him. How could he not be happy? Edward, keep an eye here. I'll go to the front and take a look. Lu Gala instructed Edward, feeling proud. Previously, both of them were war zone commanders, and Edward was still arrogant. Now, he should know how to respect a perfect powerhouse. Edward could not say much and could only nod. The other party might become a god, so Edward did not dare to offend him. Watching Lu Gala leave, Edward looked back at the middle army. It was early in the morning, and the sun was rising behind him. However, Edward was a metal life form, and his retina was different from normal flesh life forms. He was not afraid of sunlight, and could clearly see the situation behind him. In the sky behind him, a person with wings on his back was flapping his wings and flying over from the distance. Who is it? Edward immediately adjusted his vision and looked further and further away. Soon, he saw the person clearly. This person had long hair and held an extremely slender blade in his hand. Why does he look so familiar? Edward adjusted his vision again and enlarged this person's facial features. At this moment, the person suddenly flipped his hair and smiled at Edward. Edward, long time no see. F***CK. Lin Zhun. Edward was shocked and felt that he was frightened. Instinctively, he raised his hand and fired a photon missile at Lin Zhun. This photon missile was Edward's trump card. It was the most powerful long-range weapon, and its explosive power was comparable to the combination of 10,000 hydrogen bombs. It could even reach the limit of sublight speed here. If it was a direct hit, as long as it was not a god, Edward was confident that he could kill in one shot. The photon missile dragged a long tail as it whizzed over. However, Lin Zhun smiled coldly and flapped his storm wings. He quickly rushed forward and caught the huge missile. Thank you for your gift, but give it to your subordinates. Exerting force with one arm, Lin Zhun swung his hand and threw the missile directly into the middle army that was getting ready. No! Edward almost did not dare to look at what was about to happen. He covered his eyes tightly with both hands. The photon missile exploded in the middle army. Disaster. This was a complete and utter disaster. The The photon missile brought about a huge mushroom cloud that spread at an extremely high speed. With a loud bang, the earth shook and the mountains shook. Because the Middle Army was densely packed together, at least 5 billion Middle Army soldiers disappeared in the photon missile. The Middle Army was stunned by the explosion and could not figure out where the enemy came from. Lin Jun took advantage of this opportunity to circulate the star power around his body and elongate the soft god saber in his hand again. Under the effect of the powerful star power, the 5 mm wide saber became 1 millimeter, and the 1,800-meter long saber became 10,000 meters. This was a fatal line. Lin Jun flapped his storm wings and flew close to the ground at an extremely low altitude, accelerating at the speed of light. Go! Whoosh! Countless people became ghosts in a daze. Under the speed that completely crushed them, they didn't even know where the enemy came from, and they couldn't react at all. They could only feel a chill on their necks or bodies, and then their heads were separated from their bodies as they were cut in half by the sword. If Lin Jun could kill 1 million people per second at the beginning of the encirclement and suppression of the reserves, then it was 10 million now. Especially now that the mushroom cloud was shrouding, people were panicking and did not know that Lin Jun was attacking. This period of time was the best time to kill. There was no need to use the saber or exert force. It was enough to drag the saber and fly quickly. At this moment, looking down from the sky, one could see a shocking spectacle. The central army of the countless races was like a huge field of dominoes, falling down in droves and dying in droves. The excellent terrain of the Skyfire continent was Lin Jun's hunting ground. All the endless races were prey. Under the bombardment of Edward's photon missile and Lin Jun's rapid slaughter, more than half of the 10 billion Middle Army were lost in less than 2 minutes. At this time, the news finally spread. Lin Jun was not dead. Lin Jun was back. In the Dimensional Corporation's spaceship high in the sky, most of the cameras outside the Westgate were following and filming at almost the same time. Although they could only capture a ray of light, they could still see Lin Jun after it was slowed down by 50,000 times. This news shocked the universe. All the races on the ground went crazy. Their hero Lin Jun had returned to their side after nearly 4 months. Moreover, his return was so shocking. This unprecedented method of killing made everyone's blood boil, and they were about to explode. In just a short while, people discovered that Lin Jun's kill count had already reached 2 billion. In almost an instant, the comments of the races on the ground almost caused the Dimensional Universe Corporation's forum to crash on the spot. The return of the king, the slaughter of the hero, the hope of the races on the ground. I hereby solemnly announce that Lin Jun has become a god. He will save our race. The heavens have eyes. Lin Jun is back, bearing the hopes of countless people. The tears of the races on the ground at this moment could probably drown an entire planet. After Lin Jun's rapid slaughter, the endless races finally reacted. Edward would never allow Lin Jun to continue acting so presumptuously. He immediately attacked Lu Gala and also launched a sniper attack on Lin Jun. He knew that Lin Jun had not become a god. If he became a god, he would not be able to stay in the Skyfire continent. Even if he was a Ju Tian, he could only temporarily descend and quickly leave. Therefore, it was impossible to rely on ordinary warriors to snipe Lin Jun. They had to rely on the Hall of the Exalted. All the Hall of the Exalted in the Westgate area, listen up. I am Edward. I have just received authorization from Boss Lu Gala. All the Hall of the Exalted in the Middle Army, the Flanking Army, and the Reserve Army at the back immediately rush to the Middle Army and kill that son of a bitch Lin Jun. Edward almost roared the last sentence. Chapter 1064. At the Westgate, there were a total of 50 Hall of the Exalted powerhouses from the endless races. Among them, there were 10 people in the Vanguard team who were participating in the siege. Lu Gala was there too. The remaining 40 people were now all gathered around a deal with Lin Jun. As these Hall of the Exalted rushed over, Lin Jun did not stay idle. He continued to kill the Middle Army. The more people he killed now, the safer the surface races would be. Moreover, This method of killing hundreds of thousands of people was so satisfying that Lin Jun could not bear to stop. Under the massacre of Lin Jun's Lightspeed longsword, less than 3 billion of the 10 billion soldiers in the Middle Army were left. They scattered and fled in all directions. Around Lin Jun, silver flags were rushing over at lightning speed. Every silver flag was enough to make the surface races tremble in fear on the battlefield, because it represented an extremely powerful hall of the Exalted. A few silver flags had already approached the area where Lin Jun was. The surface races could not help but worry when they saw this. "Do you want to let the powerhouses surround me?" Lin Jun's lips curled into a smile. He was not afraid of these Hall of the Exalted, but at this moment he still did not want to be entangled with too many Hall of the Exalted. Now that the opponent's numbers were concentrated, he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to kill more. "Since you want to surround me, then let's see how fast you are." Lin Jun flapped his thunder wings and rushed toward the army on the left flank. When the Endless Race army on the flank saw Lin Jun's arrival, their formation immediately collapsed. The magnificent feat of killing 10 billion had scared the ordinary warriors of the Endless Races out of their wits. Lin Jun was a bit of a bully. "You're already a top Hall of the Exalted member. Instead of fighting a Hall of the Exalted, you're using your unparalleled speed to kill us." Lin Jun's attack caused the army on the flank to collapse immediately. A silver flag rushed toward him. "Lin Jun, don't be arrogant. I'm ancient warrior Garund. I'm here to take your life." Garund's speed was very fast, and he managed to block Lin Jun's path by relying on his superior foresight. Behind Lin Jun, there were already more than a dozen silver flags desperately chasing after him. Lin Jun's expression did not change. He did not turn in the air to dodge. With a shake of his hand, he shot out an energy sword with his left hand, and it passed by Guland. The sound of metal clashing and the sound of a blade piercing into a body rang out at the same time. Lin Jun was still flying at a low altitude, while Garund's saber had turned into scrap metal. It was like two cars colliding head-on. With the force of each other superimposed, no matter how sturdy the car was, it would not be able to withstand the impact. Garund's saber hit Lin Jun, but did not injure him. Instead, the saber was scrapped. It was as if he had not cut a person, but a lump of iron. Garund was stunned as he slid forward for a distance. Suddenly, his body was torn into pieces. The moment the two of them passed each other, he was cut into several pieces by the energy sword. He had only managed to fly for a while due to inertia. Before he died, Garund still looked at the superior grade, true treasure saber in his hand in disbelief. He could not understand how Lin Jun's body could be so strong. In the dimensional universe, words that had not been seen in a long time flashed by. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun has killed Garund of the Endless Race Hall of Fame. He has made a comeback. At this moment, many surface races could not help but cry. It had been 4 months. For months since there had been news of the Endless Race Hall of Fame falling. People had even despaired, thinking that the surface races would not have such a chance again. However, they had not expected Lin Jun to return and create another miracle, bringing them endless hope. But this was only the beginning. With his advantage in speed, Lin Jun began to drag a group of Endless Race Hall of Fame members into the air. He did not fly extremely fast, so that the other party could not catch up. Instead, he pulled a distance that was neither too far nor too close, giving the other party hope. However, they were always a little too slow to catch up. Lin Jun waved the saber in his hand, starting a crazy massacre at the flank, middle, and reserve areas. Although this massacre was not as fast as the other party's formation, it was more shocking. That was because that was a confrontation, while this was a pursuit. Every time Lin Jun's golden flag whistled over, the endless race would cry and howl. Everyone hated their parents for not giving them 2 more legs so that they could run faster. Some of the endless race that were born with more legs, such as centipedes and spiders, realized that no matter how many legs they had, they could not outrun Lin Jun. Bolts of lightning lingered on the battlefield, causing the endless race to piss their pants in terror. There were already more than 20 Hall of Fame members behind him, but they could only eat Lin Jun's dust. Edward was so angry that he cursed. Block him. Don't chase after him. Spread out and block his path. Some Hall of Fame members tried to outflank him, but it was exactly what Lin Jun wanted. In a one-on-one battle, Lin Jun had no pressure to kill such Hall of Fame members. Rolling captions constantly flashed in the dimensional universe. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun killed Endless Race Hall of Fame Zhang Xiao. 2 consecutive kills. Everyone is shocked. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun killed Endless Race Hall of Fame Multiple Eyes. 3 consecutive kills. His reputation shakes the world. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun killed Endless Race Hall of Fame Hua Xingda. 4 consecutive kills. His momentum is unstoppable. Such a scene made Edward so anxious that the corners of his mouth were almost rusty. Boss Lu Gala, this won't do. We can't catch up with Lin Jun. He won't fight when we have more people, and we can't beat him when we have fewer people. If this goes on, he'll mess up the situation at Westgate alone. Lu Gala also saw the news about Lin Jun. After hearing Edward's report, he knew that he had to come up with a solution. If this went on, it would be good enough if he could keep his life, let alone get a spot. He immediately contacted Shadow Killer. Brother, this won't do. If this goes on, both of us will be finished. You have to act immediately. As long as the city gate is opened, the situation will be set. No matter what Lin Jun does, it will be useless. When Shadow Killer heard these words, he gritted his teeth. Originally, he had not made up his mind to surrender, but Lin Jun's appearance made him make up his mind. If Lin Jun gained the upper hand, then Shadow Killer would not have a good life. It would be better to just surrender. Although now wasn't the best time, Shadow Killer couldn't care less. Brother Lu Gala, the city's protective shield can't be fully opened yet because the main control is with Jiu Xuan. With my authority, I can only open the west gate. Even if you want to enter the city, you can only enter through the gate. That's enough. After we open the gates, Brother Shadows Lay, you'll guard the gates and stop the people from your race. I'll lead my men and charge in. With the 2 of us working together, your race definitely won't be able to stop us. As long as you can hold the gates, our army will still be able to charge in and take down the holy capital. Okay, let's do that. In 3 minutes, the gate will definitely open. Shadow Killer and Lu Gala came to an agreement and immediately went to the gate. Beside him were all his trusted subordinates. These people were dead set on following Shadow Killer and wouldn't listen to anyone else's orders. When they arrived at the gate, Shadow Killer and his subordinates didn't say anything. They suddenly attacked and slaughtered the tens of thousands of people guarding the gate. After clearing out the guards, Shadow Killer immediately used his authority and opened the west gate of the holy capital. When the gate opened, the protective shield outside the gate was also broken. At this point, the surface races finally opened the gate to the endless races. Meanwhile, Shadows Lay led his trusted subordinates at the city gates to intercept the ground forces that wanted to chase them out after realizing that something was amiss. Outside the gate, Lu Gala led a large group of people and charged towards the west gate. This news was like a bolt from the blue to the surface races. The surface races were betrayed for the second time. This time, it was Shadow Killer who betrayed them. Not only did his betrayal cause the surface races to lose a perfected warrior, but it also caused the endless races to gain a perfected warrior. Under this situation, the surface races had no chance at all. Moreover, this bastard had opened the gate. Some of the surface races warriors wanted to attack Shadow Killer, but they were all easily killed by him. A perfected warrior wasn't just for show. A feeling of despair spread in everyone's hearts. It's over. Until a few people charged out of the city and engaged in a fierce battle with Shadow Killer and the others of the gate. The people who came were the original first and second place of the Surface Races Hall of Fame, Xiong and Crane Shadow. The 2 of them were originally guarding the North Gate, but Xiong always felt that the West Gate where Shadow Killer was at was a little weak, so he sent people to monitor the situation here and was ready to support at any time. This was a right move. He saw Shadow Killer's betrayal at the first moment. When things reached a critical moment, he immediately rushed over with Crane Shadow and the others and launched a desperate attack on Shadow Killer at the most crucial moment. Shadow Killer had always looked down on these juniors, but today, Xiong and Crane Shadow taught him a lesson. Xiong strength was actually not much weaker than Shadow Killer's. With the help of a very strong Crane Shadow, the two of them actually managed to force Shadow Killer out of the gate alive. It was only when Lu Gala brought people over that Shadow Killer finally stood firm, but the gate was already lost. Lu Gala pointed at the gate. Warriors of the endless races, as long as we pass through this gate, the holy capital will be ours. This will be the final battle. Go! Crush those who resist into powder. With that, Lu Gala took the lead and was the first to rush out. Shadow Killer didn't say anything and followed closely behind. At this point, he had no other choice. 7 or 8 Hall of Fame members follow behind and immediately beat up Xiong and Crane Shadow until they couldn't resist. Facing 2 perfected warriors, the 2 of them were still unable to do anything. Soon, they were heavily injured. The army behind them arrived with a rumble, and the West Gate was about to be lost. This was a gate of life and death. As long as the West Gate wasn't broken, the holy capital could still be defended. However, if the gate was lost, then even God wouldn't be able to save the surface races. Chapter 1065. Clang, 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 clang. Countless attacks rained down on them. Xiong and Crane Shadow had to face countless attacks every second. All their companions around them were dead. The few Hall of the Exalted who came with them had turned into dust. Only the 2 of them were left. In front of them, vague figures flashed. Their eyes were blurred by blood, and they could no longer see each other's movements. The astral power in their bodies was almost depleted in a short time. They knew they could not hold on any longer. Brother Xiong, we're going to die here this time, Crane Shadow shouted. Crane Shadow shouted. Xiong shook the blood off his face and showed a determined expression. There's no chance. I'll self-destruct to give you a chance. Go into the city and fight in the streets. Lin Jun is still outside. He's very strong. He'll definitely come to support us. The longer we drag this out, the more chance we have to survive. I'm not someone who's afraid of death. If we're going to die, we'll die together. I'll drag a few of you down with me. Xiong turned around and looked at Crane Shadow. All right, let's self-destruct together then. Give them an unforgettable display of fireworks. The 2 of them made up their minds and prepared to charge forward. 2 streams of light flashed. Lu Gala and Shadow Slay attacked together at the crucial moment. The streams of light shot through the 2's hearts. Xiong and Crane Shadow fell on their backs. They could only feel endless darkness attacking them. We've tried our best. Thud, thud. The 2 of them fell into the dust. The last guard at the West Gate had fallen. The people from the endless races laughed in the distance. They could go straight in. Watch out. What's that? Above the sky, a meteor came crashing down with a rumble. No, it was not a meteor. It was a star. The people who were preparing to enter the city retreated. The star hit the ground hard, forming a deep pit with a diameter of 1,000 meters. In the next moment, Lin Jun appeared beside Xiong and Crane Shadow. He raised his hand and fed them 2 9 reincarnation heavenly spirit golden pills. The powerful medicine flowed, and the 2 of them were revived instantly. We're not dead. Lin Jun saved us. Lin Jun, you've come. Lin Jun chuckled. Why are you in such a hurry to die? You guys still have a bright future ahead of you. After saying that, Lin Jun pushed them back and said, go back and guard your base. I don't have a clone technique right now. I can guard the West Gate, but I can't guard the North Gate. Don't lose the North Gate and become a sinner of our people. Both Xiong and Crane Shadow let out a long sigh. Although they didn't quite believe that Lin Jun could guard the West Gate by himself, Lin Jun was right. Their original mission was to guard the North Gate. After experiencing death once, the 2 of them seemed to have become indifferent to life and death. They cupped their fists towards Lin Jun to express their gratitude. Lin Jun, you don't have to thank me. You 2 are heroes. No one will forget what you've done. Oh, that's right. There's a vine over there. Go and take the Godstone from it to stabilize the holy capital's defenses. Xiong Jing and Crane Shadow turned around and saw a huge treasure-seeking vine not far from the city gate. There were countless Godstones hanging from it. When Lin Jun became a Godstone, the treasure-seeking vine also leveled up. This tough plant's vitality had reached an unimaginable level. Although there were many wounds on its body, they were quickly recovering. The most important thing was the Godstones. There were countless Godstones on the treasure-seeking vine. There were at least 100 million of them. They had followed Lin Jun and collected them. Lin Jun, you're the savior of the world. Lin Jun waved his hand. Xiong Jing and Crane Shadow didn't say anything else. They immediately retreated and took all the Godstones on the treasure-seeking vine with them. Lin Jun raised his hand. The treasure-seeking vine turned into a bracelet and wrapped around his wrist. Looking at Lu Gala and Shadow Killer opposite him, Lin Jun said, Shadow Killer, I'm informing you now. Because you betrayed your race, your right to command the West Gate has been stripped. Now, I'm taking over the defense of the West Gate. Shadow Killer also stared at Lin Jun. Lin, it seems that you've forgotten the time when you were running for your life under my hands. Now that you dare to guard the West Gate, you'll be buried here. Lu Gala also took a step forward. Lin Jun, the ghosts of my race's 10 billion warriors are waiting for you in hell. They're waiting to drink your blood and eat your flesh. I'll send you down to meet them now. You two are shameless. Since you're so capable, bring it on. Shadow Killer and Lu Gala looked at each other. They didn't want to fight Lin Jun immediately. After all, Lin Jun's crazy massacre just now had shocked them too much. They still wanted to observe and wait for an opportunity. At this time, a large group of Hall of the Exalted rushed over from behind. It was Edward and the others. When Edward saw Lin Jun, he immediately shouted, Lin Jun, you have nowhere to go this time. Pay the price for playing the hero. Lin Jun slowly raised his hand and took out his drunken spear, two-headed snake from the celestial world. Clap, clap, clap. Lin Jun raised his hand and gestured for a moment before assuming a fighting stance. As a warrior, why do you have so much nonsense to say? Is it hard for you to chase me? Then this time, I'll definitely not leave, but all of you from the endless races can forget about passing through the West Gate. Buzz! With a shake of the 7-meter-long spear, Lin Jun shouted, Let's fight. Asterisk, 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 the West Gate of the Holy Capital became the focus of the entire universe. Although the battles in other areas were also extremely fierce, they couldn't attract people's attention at this time. The various filming equipment of the Dimensional Universe Corporation captured the West Gate area from all angles without any blind spots. Almost all of the people from the two major races were staring at the West Gate. In other areas, the endless races once again increased their firepower for the other three gates to support Lin Jun. Now, there were 50 Hall of the Exalted members outside the West Gate. As long as it wasn't someone at the perfect level like Jiu Xuan, anyone else would be courting death. Not only would they not be able to help Lin Jun, but they would also be a hindrance. Therefore, for the first time, no one from the two major races went to the West Gate, leaving Lin Jun alone to face the 50 Hall of the Exalted Experts. In the dimensional universe, the atmosphere was so tense that it made people unable to breathe. This kind of depression before the start of the decisive battle was enough to cause a heart attack. On the Skyfire continent, a cold wind blew. Previously, the West Gate of the Holy Capital was protected by a protective shield. Now that the West Gate was open, it became a wind gap. The wind whistled and passed through the huge city gate, bringing with it a shrill sound. This sound was like the starting gun of a competition, the horn of war. In an instant, the battle horn was blown. Kill! A roar burst out from several Hall of the Exalted Experts. They had chased Lin Jun all the way, but in the end, they couldn't even touch a shadow. Their hearts were already filled with anger. Now that the enemy who had slaughtered 10 billion people was right in front of them, how could they not explode? In an instant, 5 Hall of the Exalted Experts attacked. None of the 5 people in the first wave were simple. One was Lin Jun's old rival, Red Widow, who was originally ranked 6th in the Hall of the Exalted. The other was Edward, who was ranked 4th. One was Sky-Splitting Tiger King, who was ranked 8th. The other two were Ancient Warriors, a pair of twins. They were ranked 19th and 20th in the Hall of the Exalted. The twin brothers' weapons were long spears. They attacked from the left and right flanks, and the long spears went straight for Lin Jun's throat and heart. On the other hand, Red Widow unleashed an inescapable net that enveloped them. Sky-Splitting Tiger King attacked from the front. The long saber in his hand had the power to split heaven and earth, tearing the space apart. Edward was at the back. He raised his hands, and two laser beams went straight for Lin Jun's eyes. When the 5 experts attacked at the same time, even a perfected expert would have to retreat. They did not even need to communicate with each other. The moment they attacked, they cooperated wonderfully. This was the strength of the Hall of the Exalted. The tactic was very simple. They had to repel Lin Jun. As long as Lin Jun retreated from the city gate area, they could drive straight in. Looking at the overwhelming attacks and enemies, Lin Jun squatted slightly and lowered his waist into a horse stance. Come on! As the attacks approached, the two-headed snake with the drunken spear in his hand shook, and a mountain-like spear screen was suddenly formed. Immovable like a mountain, a dazzling light shone in the city gate, and a deafening roar sounded. After the strong light faded, people saw a magical scene. The twins' long spears, Edward's laser beams, Sky-Splitting Tiger King's saber, and Red Widow's inescapable net were all blocked by Lin Jun's spear. All the attacks were concentrated in one line and hit Lin Jun's two-headed snake. They were all blocked. Lin Jun was able to find a point that was almost impossible to find amidst the attacks that were at the limit of sublight speed. He blocked 5 people with one spear. This is impossible. Sky-Splitting Tiger King, who was charging head-on, was the first to roar. After all, he had never really faced off against Lin Jun and did not know how terrifying Lin Jun was. Lin Jun's lips curled into a sneer. You think that you won't die, but do you think it's useful? Die. He pushed the long spear outwards, and the attacks of the 5 people all retreated. Lin Jun took advantage of the situation and raised the long spear in his hand. Raising spear stance. First one, at an unbelievable angle and strength. The spear pierced through Sky-Splitting Tiger King's forehead. Star power exploded, and his spiritual sea instantly turned into a mess. Sky-Splitting Tiger King's brain exploded like a watermelon. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun has killed Sky-Splitting Tiger King of Endless Race Hall of Fame. 5 consecutive kills reappear. Descend of a Tyrant. Before the brain juice splattered onto his body, Lin Jun flashed past like lightning. His long spear trembled and slashed across the twins' throats. Shaking spear stance. Surface Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun has killed Sky-Battling War Emperor of Endless Race Hall of Fame. 7 consecutive kills. Full power. Lin Jun's movements were unbelievably fast. His long spear stabbed diagonally, raising flames to burn the sky. Raising spear stance. A PFFF. Red Widow, this flirtatious woman, let out a blood-curdling scream. Her body was pierced by the spear, and she died on the spot. Without waiting for the dimensional universe to send out a rolling message, Edward, who had seized the opportunity, raised his arms. 2 huge missiles whizzed out. Lin Jun was in the air. Edward had grasped the opportunity very accurately and would definitely hit him. Lin Jun did not dodge at all. He raised one hand, and the long spear was shot out like a javelin. Rumble. A huge fiery explosion sounded in the air. Edward's missiles hit Lin Jun. At the same time, Lin Jun's long spear also pierced through Edward's head. With the support of a huge amount of star power, Edward's body was instantly torn apart. After the explosion, the smoke and dust dispersed. Although Lin Jun's body was char-black, he was still standing upright in the air. He raised his hand and released a gravitational force, retrieving the long spear. Pa-pa-pa. With a series of spear moves, Lin Jun's long spear pointed forward. Chapter 1066. In less than 2 seconds, Lin Jun had killed 5 people in a row, causing the Hall of the Exalted members of Endless Race to break out in cold sweat. This Westgate was not easy to deal with. Even Lu Gala and Shadow Killer, two perfect experts, felt troubled. Lin Jun was so strong that they would have to pay a heavy price to take down the West Gate. Lu Gala, what should we do? Shadow Killer asked. Lu Gala thought for a moment. We can't be impatient. Lin Jun was originally one of the top 3 experts in the Hall of the Exalted. Now that he has broken through, his strength has increased tremendously. If we attack him forcefully, I'm afraid we will lose too many members. Then what should we do? Lu Gala looked at the city gate. The Holy Capital's gate was tens of thousands of meters wide. This was to allow large spaceships to pass through. This width was enough for thousands of people to pass through at the same time. There's a way. Lin Jun wants to guard the gate, right? Let him guard it then. Immediately form an assault team. Each team has 10,000 people, and their goal is to charge into the Holy Capital. We still have 10 billion soldiers at the West Gate. Let's see if he can guard the gate by himself, if he has to run around for his life. Let's tire him out. When the time is right, we will make our move. Shadow Killer nodded. Lin Jun had become a stumbling block for Endless Race. If they did not kick him away, it would be almost impossible to take down the Holy Capital. It was worth it no matter how big the price was. Okay, then the people I brought will take the lead. Shadow Killer had just joined Endless Race and wanted to show off. Lu Gala nodded. Okay, I will ask for support from the other gates. Soon, the operation began. Shadow Killer brought about 100,000 people. 10,000 of them began to charge. Some flew in the sky, some attacked Lin Jun, and some sneaked in from the corners. Lin Jun did not expect the other party to use this method. It was very difficult to guard the gate with a width of 10,000 meters. However, Lin Jun naturally had his own way. With a rumble, thunderclouds appeared under Lin Jun's feet. With the storm wings on his back, Lin Jun's speed soared to faster than the speed of light. A strange sight appeared at the city gate. Lin Jun was like a phantom, suddenly appearing on one side and suddenly appearing on the other. The long spear in his hand struck north and south, up and down. He summoned his 7 flying swords as well. After Lin Jun's body was reforged, these 7 swords had become top-tier true treasures. They carried extremely strong elemental power as they flew around the city gate. With tens of thousands of people attacking, thousands of people fell every second. A shadowy figure tried to sneak over from afar, but Lin Jun suddenly teleported in front of this person. The spear in his hand burst forth with endless light as he ruthlessly stabbed forward. Lin Jun of the Surface Race Hall of Fame has killed Sun Kuei of the Surface Race Hall of Fame. When this message appeared, many people were stunned. However, this only lasted for an instant. Everyone quickly reacted. Lin Jun was killing traitors. Immediately, the dimensional universe was filled with cheers. Compared to enemies, traitors were even more disgusting. The first wave of people sent by Shadow Killer didn't even last for 10 seconds. Immediately after, the second wave of Endless Race troops rushed over. Phew! This kind of constant teleportation battle consumes a lot more energy than before, but I have to persevere. A continuous tug-of-war had begun. The endless races seemed to have made up their minds to exhaust Lin Jun to death. One by one, tens of thousands of people lined up to appear. The line stretched beyond the horizon, reaching the end of the line of sight. The Dark West Gate was like the big mouth of a black hole beast. No matter how many people went in, they wouldn't come out again. Lu Gala stood in the distance. The dimensional universe's target was firmly locked onto Lin Jun. No matter how many of his subordinates died, he was unmoved. He had been analyzing the changes in Lin Jun's situation. The star rose in the east and set in the west. It rose again and set again. This repeated for 10 days. The West Gate still hadn't fallen. However, it was difficult to see Lin Jun in the dimensional universe. This was because there were mountains of corpses around him. The corpses had already buried the city gate, causing the subsequent attacking troops to have no choice but to clean up and move away the corpses that blocked the path. However, this couldn't keep up with the speed of the corpses. There was deep blood everywhere at the city gate. The surrounding area had gradually shrunk due to the pile of corpses. The originally 10,000-meter-wide city gate had shrunk to less than 3,000 meters. The endless race's eyes were red from the killing. They no longer pursued, charging into the city. Instead, they attacked Linjun with all their might. From afar, one could only see countless people charging toward Linjun like suicide attacks. Light and shadows filled the air, and the sounds of killing shook the sky. In the past 10 days, another 2 billion soldiers had fallen at the city gate. However, their sacrifices weren't in vain. Lu Gala's dimensional universe could sense that the star power emitted by Lin Jun had weakened. Under the attacks of countless people from the endless races, his star power was like a candle in the wind. It kept flickering under the attacks, as if it could be extinguished at any time. Reporting. Commander, there's a result. A communications officer ran over. Lu Gala's eyes lit up. What's the result? Just now, one of our Emperor powerhouses used his sword to slash Lin Jun. And then? Lu Gala asked. And then, he was killed by Lin Jun. Shadow Kill, who was listening from the side, rolled his eyes. What's the use of that? Is Lin Jun injured? The communications officer stammered. He's not injured. However, this is the first time in a long time that our people have hit Lin Jun. The others were killed when they got close to him. Lu Gala waved his hand. Well done. Continue doing this. Inform everyone that the number of people in each formation will increase to 20,000. Don't try to charge into the city anymore. Focus on attacking Lin Jun. Understood. The communications officer ran off. The endless races obeyed Lu Gala's orders and increased the number of people in each formation to 20,000. Everyone used their strongest moves. They didn't believe that Lin Jun could really hold back 10,000 people. At this moment, killing Lin Jun had become an obsession in the hearts of the endless races, even more so than capturing the holy capital. As a result, the pressure on Lin Jun increased. Just like that, 3 more days passed. The thick smell of blood was enough to drive people crazy. The entire area within a few hundred miles of the Western Gate was covered in a thick layer of red clouds. This was no longer the fire clouds of the Skyfire continent, but a fog of blood. According to statistics, the number of people who had died at the Western Gate had exceeded 5 billion. Of the nearly 100 billion people who had besieged the holy capital, less than 60 billion were left. 15 billion of them had fallen at the Western Gate, under Lin Jun's butcher's knife. Lu Gala's hair was already turning white. Although he looked calm on the surface, he was panicking inside, until the communications officer appeared in front of him again. Reporting to the commander, we just had a quasi-haul of the famer hit Lin Jun with a mountain-splitting axe and made him take a step back. He took a step back. Lu Gala's eyes lit up. Being able to take a step back proved that Lin Jun had consumed a lot of energy. It was about time. He waved his hand. Inform the suicide squad to go into battle. Understood. The communications officer went down, and soon, the suicide squad that Lu Gala had carefully organized appeared. The so-called suicide squad was all made up of demigods. These demigods had little hope of advancing to perfection, and they were all fanatical warmongers among the endless races. Lu Gala only gave them one mission, and that was to rush to Lin Jun's side and self-destruct. The demigods, who were already mentally prepared, set off. Each squad of 100 people began to charge toward Lin Jun. Lin Jun, who was already numb from the battle, still killed one with a shot from afar. However, the demigod's momentum did not decrease. When he rushed to within 100 meters of Lin Jun, he exploded like a small sun. The self-destruction of a demigod was almost comparable to a small star explosion. The snow lotus on Lin Jun's body bloomed, blocking the impact of the shockwave. Then, a series of explosions began. When each demigod rushed over, their star power had already reached the critical point of explosion. As long as they exploded at the city gate, they would definitely affect Lin Jun. The rumbling explosion feast began. Lin Jun could no longer be seen. The mountains of corpses were also vaporized in the continuous explosions. 100 suicide squads, a total of 10,000 demigods, died in the explosions just like that. When the explosions just ended, Lu Gala felt Lin Jun's existence through the dimensional universe. He was not dead yet, but his aura was very weak. Lu Gala's eyes lit up. He turned around and said, "Brothers, our success or failure depends on this. Lin Jun is already an arrow at the end of its flight. It's time for us to enter the stage. Go." Behind him, more than 40 members of the Hall of the Exalted who had been waiting impatiently for a long time finally erupted with amazing energy and charged toward the West City Gate. The one who rushed at the front was the hope of the demon race, Morrow. "Lin Jun, it's time to end our feud." Morrow transformed in the air. 2 heads grew out from his shoulders. At the same time, 4 arms appeared. 3 heads and 6 arms. This was Morrow's ultimate form. When he was in the Hall of the Exalted's arena, he was still in the form of 2 heads and 4 arms. Now that decades had passed, his progress was also very great. He was bent on finding Lin Jun for revenge. Looking at these powerful members of the Hall of the Exalted, the people of the races on the ground were in despair. No matter how strong Lin Jun was, it was impossible for him to turn defeat into victory in such a situation. Guarding the West City Gate was different from freely killing in the wilderness. There was no doubt that he had to put in more effort to defend. After more than 10 days of crazy attacks from the opponent and withstanding the self-destruction of 10,000 demigods, could Lin Jun still face these Hall of the Exalted? Even an ordinary god might not be able to do this. Morrow passed through the smoke and dust after the explosion and saw Lin Jun from afar. His clothes were tattered like a beggar's. The spear in his hand was supporting him on the ground. It seemed like he was about to die. Chapter 1067. Lin Jun was indeed very tired. It was true that his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds, but one had to know that he had been fighting for more than 10 days without rest and had personally killed more than 15 billion people. Not to mention humans, even 15 billion pigs were not something that an ordinary person could kill. Moreover, every one of them was a powerhouse above the divine transformation realm. However, Lin Jun knew that he had to withstand this wave of attacks. As long as he could withstand this wave, Lin Jun was confident that he would be able to persist until the end. Seeing Morrow pouncing towards him, Lin Jun raised the 2-headed snake in his hand and stabbed with his spear. Raising spear style, Morrow was now at the peak of the divine stone realm. He had hopes of becoming a god through his own efforts. As the star of hope of countless races, he was the most underestimated person. Facing Lin Jun's deadly spear, Morrow was not afraid. He held a long saber in front of him and raised it to block. Clang! Even though Lin Jun was extremely weak now, the power of his spear still suppressed Morrow's long saber. The collision between the saber and the spear brought about a stream of sparks and went straight for Morrow's chest. As long as the spear hit, Morrow would definitely die. At the critical moment, Morrow's left hand raised a shield and protected Morrow's chest. This was a supreme grade, true treasure shield, and its defensive power was incomparably shocking. Lin Jun's spear stabbed on the shield, causing Morrow's body to stop for a moment. However, it did not cause any damage to him. This thrilling attack made Morrow break out in cold sweat. However, it was followed by anger. "Lin Jun, bastard, you're as tired as a dog, and you still dare to bite others. Today I'll break your legs." Morrow passed the long saber to his left hand and held the shield in front of him. He held the long saber in his left hand and the war hammer in his right hand and attacked Lin Jun with rumbling sounds. This shield was incomparably huge and almost protected Mo Luo's entire body. Meanwhile, the weapons in his left and right hands were crazily smashing towards Lin Jun. As long as this shield didn't break, Mo Luo would be in an invincible position. Lu Gala saw the opportunity and immediately ordered his subordinates. "Quick, quick, quick! As long as Mo Luo can withstand it, Lin Jun won't have the chance to use it. Now is the time. Kill him while he's down." With Morrow at the front, another 6 or 7 Hall of the Exalted rushed up from the surroundings. With the help of Morrow's cover, the weapons in their hands covered the sky as they attacked. Every attack was extremely fierce. This was the first time Lin Jun had been at a disadvantage since the attack on the West Gate began. Starfall. Lin Jun raised his hand, and Stellarfall ruthlessly smashed over. The shield in Mo Luo's hand transformed and instantly became incomparably huge. It actually blocked Lin Jun's Fall of the Stars completely. Moro, who was behind the shield, let out a muffled groan. There was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, but he was grinning maliciously. Lin Jun, in order to defeat you, you don't know how I've survived for so many years. My star power now exceeds 7 billion, and this shield is a top-grade defensive treasure. Not to mention you, even a lower celestial can forget about breaking it with a frontal attack. Today, I'll return all the humiliation you brought me back to you one by one. Those behind put in more effort. Kill him. The weapons in Mo Luo's hands were also extremely heavy. With the shield as cover, he attacked madly. Meanwhile, more and more endless races seized the opportunity to join in the attack. In less than 5 seconds, more than 20 Hall of the Exalted had already rushed up. The madness of their attacks could not be described with words. Everyone wanted to kill Lin Jun. Once they killed Lin Jun, they would become famous overnight. Under such a fierce bombardment, Lin Jun finally retreated. He could not break Mo Luo's shield. In the end, he could not withstand the all-out attacks of so many people. Immovable as a mountain was also not enough. What he was facing at this moment was like a train that was rumbling forward. It was difficult to stop it with just flesh and blood. The area around the city gate was beginning to reveal itself inch by inch. Liu Gala's eyes flashed with excitement. He was about to succeed. The stumbling block at the city gate was finally going to be kicked away. As long as he could drive Lin Jun out of the area around the city gate, the people would besiege him from all directions. No matter how powerful he was, he could only surrender without putting up a fight. There were more than 30 Hall of the Exalted participating in the attack. Lin Jun's eyes narrowed slightly. He still had to wait a little longer. The last of his star power began to erupt. He activated Immovable as a mountain to its limit. He was almost pushed back by the other party's shockwave. There are 50 Hall of the Exalted here. Including Shadow Killer, there are almost 60 of them. I've killed about 11 or 12 of them before this. There are still 48 of them left. Now that 30 of them have rushed over, I still have to hold on a little longer. 31, 32, 33, 35. When the number of Hall of the Exalted from the other party had accumulated to 40, Lin Jun finally could not hold on any longer. There's still some power left. I'm going to give all of you a big gift. Lin Jun suddenly gave up his defense and directly began to transform into the Black Hole Beast. This made all the endless races break out in cold sweat. Not good. He's going to use Black Hole Devour. Don't be afraid. He's undoubtedly courting death by using Black Hole Devour at this juncture. Focus fire, and kill him instantly. Everyone, let's do it together. Use as much strength as you can. Brothers, the chance to destroy Lin Jun has come. This head is mine. Countless attacks also burst out at this moment. The endless races gathered all the means that they could use and blasted fiercely on Lin Jun's body. Smoke and dust exploded all over the sky. The earth was rumbling and shaking. The dazzling light was so dazzling that everyone could not open their eyes. There was no need to aim at all. The black hole beast that Lin Jun had transformed into was now 100 meters long. They could hit him directly. The dull sounds of the attacks made everyone excited. With such a concentrated attack from the Hall of the Exalted, not to mention Lin Jun, even a middle celestial would probably be turned into slag under such a concentrated attack. When everyone's attacks were over and the smoke and dust dispersed, the people could finally see the scene in front of them clearly. A huge black hole beast had completed its transformation. The metallic scales on its body were now full of scars. Blood was seeping out from the gaps between the scales. However, there was no doubt that he was still alive. Under the concentrated attack of 40 Hall of the Exalted, Lin Jun was still alive. He was still alive. This scene was simply infuriating. No one knew how Lin Jun's physical body could be so tough that he could even withstand such a sure-kill attack. The most important proof was that he opened his mouth. The galaxy was spiraling, and a black hole had appeared. Seeing such a scene, Liu Gala, Shadow Killer, and the others who were at the back of the team cursed. They immediately turned around and fled, instantly disappearing outside the West Gate. On the other hand, the Hall of the Exalted who were standing at the front were not so lucky. They had already charged too deep. Although it might only take a second to turn around and escape, at this time, Lin Jun would not give them even a fraction of a second. Facing the 40 Hall of the Exalted powerhouses in front of him, and facing Morrow, who was at the front but was now stunned, Lin Jun revealed a terrifying smile. "If you can't move, I'll eat you." Roar! The black hole revolved, and a black death ripple spread out in the area of the city gate at a speed faster than the speed of light. The edge of the city gate was protected by the Holy Capital's protective shield and could not be shaken. However, everything within the city gate was within the range of the black hole's devouring. Lin Jun had 10 billion star power. If he wanted to resist the black hole's devouring, he would need at least 20 billion star power. Not to mention these Hall of the Exalted, even a group of lower celestials would be eaten without a doubt. No one could resist at all. The 40 Hall of the Exalted tried to escape in all kinds of ways, but it was useless. It was impossible to move at the speed of light in the Skyfire continent. Even if they moved at the speed of light, the black hole would still devour light. I refused to accept this. Morrow howled and was the first to be swallowed into the black hole. The heavenly pride of the endless races, the hope of the endless races, spun his body and went straight into the depths of the black hole. The powerful black hole squeezed and instantly compressed Morrow's body infinitely, turning him into the black hole's neutron dust. The Hall of the Exalted behind him did not escape the same fate. One by one, they were sucked into the black hole like plushies being sucked into a vacuum cleaner. They were unwilling and could not believe it, but this was the truth. The moment Lin Jun withstood their crazy attacks with his flesh and blood, they were destined to die. No one could save them. A series of notifications from the dimensional universe rolled in the dimensional universe like exploding beans. Surface Race Hall of the Exalted member Lin Jun killed Morrow of the Endless Races Hall of the Exalted. A genius has fallen. Surface Race Hall of the Exalted member Lin Jun killed Iugia of the Endless Races Hall of the Exalted. 2 consecutive kills shook the world. Surface Race Hall of the Exalted member Lin Jun killed Cliff of the Endless Races Hall of the Exalted. 3 consecutive kills shook the galaxy. Surface Race Hall of the Exalted member Lin Jun killed Wolf Heartless of the Endless Races Hall of the Exalted. 39 consecutive kills shook the world. Surface Race Hall of the Exalted member Lin Jun killed Si Kong Hao of the Endless Races Hall of the Exalted. 40 consecutive kills were unparalleled in the world. The battle between the two sides stopped at this moment. Regardless of whether it was the East Gate, the South Gate, or the North Gate, the people who were attacking crazily from the 3 directions to pin down the surface race and could not support Lin Jun put down their weapons almost at the same time. What happened? Could it be that the Dimensional Universe Corporation's system was wrong? How could something like 40 consecutive kills happen? Could it be that the Hall of the Exalted experts were all fish on the chopping board, waiting to be chopped? The Commander-in-Chief, Xidagarba, could hardly believe his eyes. However, after repeatedly opening the Dimensional Universe to check and asking the people around him, he confirmed that the Dimensional Universe's system was not wrong. The Hall of the Exalted members they were so proud of, in one go, no, in an instant, 40 of them were killed by Lin Jun. Even Morrow, whom Xidagarba had high hopes for, had fallen here, as the star of hope of the endless races. Xidagarba could not help but tremble with anger. This is simply a disgrace. Chapter 1068. After making up his mind to deal with Lin Jun, Xidagarba acted very quickly. He wanted to solve the problem once and for all, so the endless races launched their final attack. Although Lin Jun had taken a lot of divine stones to defend the city, the consumption here was even greater. After so many days, they were almost used up. After all the endless races pressed on, the city's defense was almost on the verge of collapse. Jiuquan and the others went up, not daring to slack off at all. Everyone knew that this was the last battle. The exhausted people of the ground races had taken elixirs repeatedly to replenish themselves. Now, they had developed a resistance to the elixirs, but they still had to persevere. Even if they died, they would die of exhaustion on the city wall. This was what Jiuquan said. Lin Jun was fighting against 20 billion enemies at the West Gate alone. How could they rest? However, after the battle, Jiuquan was also not confident. The reason was that Lin Jun was too dangerous for Lin Jun. But now, there was really no one available. Other than Jiuquan and multi-armed, whoever the ground races sent over would only be a burden to Lin Jun. They could only hope that Lin Jun was strong enough to survive this wave. As long as they could survive, the endless races would almost reach their limit. Because of Lin Jun's appearance, there seemed to be some hope in this battle. Xidagarba, Alcade, Great Burning Heaven, and Titan King, the four perfected experts, arrived at the West Gate together. After the four of them arrived, they met up with Liu Gala and Shadow Killer. Behind Liu Gala, there were only 6 or 7 Hall of the exalted martial artists left. All of them looked defeated, obviously shocked by Lin Jun's 40 consecutive kills. When Xidagarba saw this situation, he snorted coldly. Liu Gala, you're really disappointing. Are you afraid to act now that you've lost? You and Shadow Killer, the 2 perfected experts, have done nothing in this battle. If this goes on, you don't have to return to the endless races. Liu Gala and Shadow Killer immediately apologized. Xidagarba waved his hand. There's no need to apologize. It's useless. Lin Jun is there now. If we don't take him down, our endless race will become the laughing stock of everyone. Moreover, we can't give him a chance to breathe. The 2 of you, take your people and attack again. I will support you when the time is right. Liu Gala and Shadow Killer also knew that they had no other choice. They didn't dare to think about becoming gods. They could only live if they defeated Lin Jun. Otherwise, if they lost this battle, they would probably be executed. Without saying a word, the 2 of them quickly issued a few orders and attacked again. The interval between Xidagarba's arrival and his next attack was no more than 30 seconds. Lin Jun didn't have any time to catch his breath. After transforming into the black hole beast, Lin Jun became even weaker. When he saw the group of experts charging towards him again, he knew that the most crucial moment had arrived. With the 2-headed snake in his hand, Lin Jun, who had transformed back into a human, sneered. Endless race scum, come at me. Let's see if your grandpa Lin Jun will lose to you. 7 Hall of the Exalted and hundreds of emperors attacked from all directions once again. The flames of war reignited. However, this time, almost everyone could see that Lin Jun was tired. After half a month of fierce battle without a moment of rest, coupled with the transformation into the black hole beast and the countless attacks, even an Iron Man would be tired. Lin Jun's attack strength and frequency were not as fast as before. An emperor's descended from the sky, the halberd in his hand going straight for Lin Jun's head. Lin Jun raised his long spear and raised burning sky. The tip of the spear and the halberd collided. Sparks flew everywhere. If it was before, Lin Jun would definitely pierce through the opponent's halberd and take his life directly. However, this time, Lin Jun could only use the method of deflecting the opponent's greatest strength and then kill him with a flick of his hand. Such a simple action was enough to explain a lot of problems. The people of Endless Race seemed to be encouraged. Each of them looked ferocious and howled as they charged forward like a pack of wolves hunting an injured tiger. A Hall of the Exalted jumped over and continuously slashed with his axe. Clang, 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 clang. Lin Jun, it's over, you ignorant and stupid thing. You've done so much for your race, but look at who's here to support you. You're just an idiot who wants to be a hero. You've been abandoned. Now open your soul, throw away your conscience, and join my endless race. This is where you belong. Lin Jun raised his long spear and stumbled to block. He seemed to be stimulated by this person's words. He turned around abruptly and unleashed a sweeping spear move. The sweeping spear style was an incomparably profound technique that allowed one to make a move before making a move. This Hall of the Exalted could not resist and was killed by Lin Jun in one shot. However, at the same time, Lin Jun suffered several fierce attacks. A sledgehammer hit his head and made a buzzing sound. Two long swords pierced his heart. The swords broke, but Lin Jun's chest was also stained with blood. Every time, Lin Jun almost exchanged injuries with the enemy. He fought with his life on the line and stained his robe with blood. However, Lin Jun did not retreat from the last area of the West Gate. He still did not let the enemy take a step into the city. In the dimensional universe, people spontaneously began to pray for Lin Jun. Woo woo woo. Lin Jun, stop fighting. You'll die if you continue like this. Damn it. I can't take it anymore. Is there a spaceship to the Skyfire continent? I want to join the battle. Even if I die, it's better than watching Lin Jun fight alone at home. Let's go together. I'm going to repair my spaceship now. Is there anyone who wants to go with me? I'm in the southern Liang country of the primordial realm. I'm expected to depart in 15 days. If you want to go, hurry up and sign up. Upstairs, please be rational. No one can interfere now. If you go, you'll only drag Lin Jun down. A lousy spaceship from the primordial realm wants to fly to Skyfire City? I'm afraid you'll starve to death before you even get there. You won't even get there in a million years. I'm not watching anymore. I'm going to cultivate. Don't wait until the army of the endless races comes. If we still have no power to resist, then we'll be sorry for Lin Jun's actions today. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Let's all pray for Lin Jun. Pray for a miracle. Many closed their eyes and began to pray for Lin Jun. Although it was useless at this moment, at least 1/3 of the people in the entire primordial realm were doing so. Lin Jun did not know that he had won the favor of the entire primordial realm's ground race. His biggest crisis had arrived. Lu Gala had entered the battlefield. A black cloud suddenly rushed over. It was Lu Gala's divine eagle. Lu Gala's divine eagle was very famous among the endless races. It was born to feed on dragons and even hunted various galactic beasts in the galaxy. The divine eagle's claws could break through the defenses of all galactic beasts. Even if Lin Jun's body was extremely tough, the divine eagle could still injure him. Lin Jun looked at the divine eagle. If he was in his best condition, he would not be afraid. But now it was difficult to deal with. He waved the spear in his hand to block the divine eagle's sharp claws. Amidst the sounds of metal clashing, Lin Jun, who could still hold on, retreated continuously. He was about to leave the city gate area. Lu Gala followed the divine eagle. He was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, his gaze swept to the ground. It was Lin Jun's footprints. The footprints were deep and shallow. His footsteps were unstable. This was definitely not something that could be deliberately created at the last minute. This also confirmed that Lin Jun's current condition was extremely poor. It was time for the final battle. Lu Gala suddenly attacked. With the divine eagle's cover, Lu Gala flashed to Lin Jun's side. With a golden hook in his hand, he slashed at Lin Jun's neck. A peak supreme grade true treasure combined with his 8 billion star power. This attack was enough to cut through everything. The space of the holy capital shook under this attack. His full strength was on full display. Lin Jun hurriedly blocked the attack with his two-headed snake. The two supreme-grade true treasures clashed. Lu Gala's current strength was above Lin Jun's, and he directly pushed Lin Jun's body forward. Boom, 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 creak, creak. There was an unpleasant sound of friction between the weapons. The golden hook had already touched Lin Jun's skin. At this time, the divine eagle also swooped down to peck Lin Jun's eyes. While Lin Jun was struggling to resist Lu Gala, the treasure-seeking vine suddenly appeared above his head. It could barely resist the divine eagle, but it definitely wouldn't last long. The veins on Lu Gala's forehead bulged. He squeezed out a few words from between his teeth. Shadow Killer, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for? The space around them twisted, and Shadow Killer's body appeared beside Lin Jun. I'm waiting for you to firmly suppress him. Only then can I guarantee that I can kill him in one strike." Before he finished speaking, a dagger appeared in Shadow Killer's hand at lightning speed and slashed at Lin Jun's throat. Annihilation, space-time, slash. Almost everyone closed their eyes at this moment. It was over. Lin Jun had done everything he could. He was a hero, but heroes also had times when they couldn't hold on. It was a pity that the races on the ground didn't have enough high-level combat power to effectively support Lin Jun. Lin Jun, you will live forever in our hearts. No one could imagine that Lin Jun still had a chance to counterattack. However, there were always miracles in the world. For example, Lin Jun actually still had a bit of strength left and activated his God's Domain at this moment. The God's Domain activated and instantly increased Lin Jun's star power to the limit. 10 billion star power increased by 70%. Although it was only for a moment, it was enough to turn the world upside down. Liu Gala and Shadow Killer were caught off guard and were instantly suppressed. Then, Lin Jun threw away the precious two-headed snake in his hand, and a high-grade sword appeared in his hand. I don't only know how to use a spear, but I also know how to use a sword. Purgatory. The power contained in 17 billion star power. The two were so close that they couldn't dodge at all. They died unjustly. Star power exploded. After the sword slashed at their bodies, there was an explosion and the two were directly vaporized. One sword, two lives. Ground Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun killed Endless Race Hall of Fame expert Liu Gala. Perfect death. Ground Race Hall of Fame Lin Jun killed Ground Race Hall of Fame expert Shadow Killer. Heaven's Net have a long arm. Everyone was stunned. Only Liu Gala's Divine Eagle, which had lost its master, still pounced at Lin Jun. Lin Jun directly grabbed the Divine Eagle and used the last of his strength to choke the eagle's neck. After a long time, the eagle stopped struggling. A few figures flew over. It was Xidagarba and the other three great perfection experts. Chapter 1069. Liu Gala and Shadow Killer had been killed by Lin Jun. This was beyond Xidagarba's expectations. In his opinion, Liu Gala and Shadow Killer's failure was entirely due to their own stupidity. If it were him, Xidagarba would never have made such a mistake. With Yao Guang and the others, Xidagarba arrived in front of Lin Jun. Lin Jun was already extremely miserable, as if he could fall to the ground at any moment. Lin Jun, you've been in the limelight enough today. It's time to send you on your way. Xidagarba didn't give Lin Jun the slightest chance. He raised his hand and slashed. A bright sword light flashed at the city gate. Then, the words of a dimensional universe flashed. Endless Race Hall of Fame member Xidagarba killed Ground Race Hall of Fame member Lin Jun. Blood splattered with one sword. Lin Jun's neck was dyed red. His body leaned against the city gate and slowly slid down. This scene made the people of the ground race feel sad. Lin Jun finally couldn't hold on anymore. He was really too tired, especially when he had just unleashed his God's Domain to kill two perfected great perfection deities. He had already created a miracle. Now that he had fallen, it was actually a form of relief for him. It was time for Lin Jun to have a good rest. People would remember him forever. Countless posts rolled through the dimensional universe. Not only were there posts from the ground races, but there were also posts from the Endless Race. Lin Jun was a great enemy of the Endless Race, but the people of the Endless Race didn't seem to hate Lin Jun. From the perspective of our race, Lin Jun is an annoying person, but from his perspective, he is undoubtedly a hero. Lin Jun is a rare enemy that I don't hate. He's a man. I hope he has a good journey. Seeing Lin Jun slip and fall at the city gate, why do my eyes feel a little sore? Hee, the wind must be too strong. Xidagarba and the others walked past Lin Jun. Lin Jun, goodbye. I'm about to pass through the west gate that you're guarding. Xidagarba was the first to walk past Lin Jun, followed by Yao Guang, who was dressed in starlight robes. Next was Great Burning Heaven, who held two snakes in his hands. Finally, it was the tall and strong Titan King. If the four of them were to enter the holy capital, no one would be able to stop them. Just as the few of them walked over, a terrifying force suddenly rose from beside them. Xidagarba's pupils instantly dilated. At this moment, he thought of an extremely terrifying possibility. He abruptly turned around and saw that Lin Jun, who had just died, had actually stood up again. Not only was he able to stand up, but Lin Jun's injuries had also recovered, and all of his star power had been restored. At this moment, Xitigarbha and the others felt as if 10,000 alpacas were galloping through their hearts. You. Lin Jun, who had stood up, sneered. You guessed right. I'm a god-level alchemist. This kind of 9 revolutions, heavenly spirit golden pill for resurrection is my patent. Unfortunately, you didn't take advantage of the opportunity just now to completely vaporize me. Then, you've lost your only chance. Lin Jun held the drunken spear and two-headed snake as he walked step by step in front of the 4 of them. He held the spear in his hand horizontally. Xitigarbha, if I kill the 4 of you, will this heavenly fire war be over? After coming back from the dead, everyone realized how difficult Lin Jun would be to deal with. A god-level alchemist could resurrect himself. Those endless races who had previously sympathized with Lin Jun shut up at this moment. Looking at Lin Jun, whose aura had erupted to the extreme, Xitigarbha and the others felt a headache coming on. Xitigarbha even suspected that Lin Jun had deliberately let him kill him and then used the 9 revolutions heavenly spirit golden pill to recover his strength. Now that Lin Jun's strength had completely recovered, no one dared to say that they could get rid of Lin Jun. Before they could do anything, Lin Jun moved. With the drunken spear and two-headed snake in hand, Lin Jun decisively attacked. His first target was the Titan King, who was closest to him. The Titan King held a lightning spear in his hand. When he saw Lin Jun attack him, he roared and counterattacked. The Titan King attacked, and so did Burning Heaven beside him. Then, Yao Guang and Xitigarbha joined the battle. The 4 Great Perfection Stage experts surrounded Lin Jun. At this point, regardless of whether the endless races were willing to admit it or not, Lin Jun already possessed strength that surpassed ordinary Great Perfection Stage experts. Even when the 4 Great Perfection Stage experts joined forces, they could only fight to a draw with Lin Jun's elusive spear technique. Moreover, they had never seen the spear technique Lin Jun used before. Xitigarbha's weapon was a Buddhist staff. As he shook it, multicolored light rose. The Yao Guang's weapon was 2 jade stones, 1 yin and 1 yang. They were refined from 2 stars. Burning Heaven's 2 venomous snakes were both astral beasts, and the Titan King's lightning spear was invincible. However, the combined power of these 4 Great Perfection Stage experts could only suppress Lin Jun slightly. The other party's spear technique was so magical that it had exceeded their understanding. When Xitigarbha saw Lin Jun's spear technique, he thought of the dead Sky Peck. However, it was obvious that Lin Jun's spear technique was above Sky Peck's. He really didn't know how this guy cultivated. The Titan King roared and waved his lightning spear to clash with Lin Jun's drunken spear. Facing the siege of 4 Great Perfection Stage experts, Lin Jun was under a lot of pressure. However, he had to win this battle. As long as he won, this heavenly flame war could be declared over. Even if the holy capital was breached, the surface races would still win in a street battle. Now, the total number of the endless races was about the same as the surface races. They could only rely on more Hall of the Exalted and more Great Perfection Stage experts. The Titan King waved his lightning spear and attacked. Lin Jun used the shaking spear style and the sweeping spear style to attack consecutively. The Titan King was still not familiar with Lin Jun's spear technique. When the sweeping spear style appeared, he thought that an opportunity had come. He immediately roared and rushed over, wanting to take the lead and kill Lin Jun. Xitigarbha, who was behind, felt that something was wrong and shouted for everyone to not move. At this moment, Lin Jun's sweeping spear style finally appeared. The spear light that was originally retreating turned around and attacked, catching the Titan King off guard. Pu. 3 or 4 bloody holes appeared on his body. Lin Jun didn't give the Titan King any chance. It was better to break 1 finger than to injure all 10. He wanted to end him completely. Broken spear style. The broken spear style was definitely the most powerful style among Lin Jun's 7 styles of burial god. The Titan King's lightning spear also made its final attack at this moment, colliding head-on with Lin Jun's broken spear style. After a huge explosion, the result of the battle was out. The Titan King died in battle. This was already the third Great Perfection Stage expert who had died in Lin Jun's hands. In comparison, Lin Jun didn't seem to be injured at all this time. Killing a Great Perfection Stage expert head-on gave Lin Jun endless confidence. He smiled coldly at Xidagarba and the other two. "It's your turn next." Xidagarba's eyes moved, and he suddenly said, "Lin Jun, do you still remember who saved your son?" Lin Jun was stunned. Of course, he remembered. "Hee. You're decisive in killing and have outstanding strength. The few of us might not be your match, but let's see if you can still attack the next person as usual." "Your Highness, it's time for you to appear." Outside the West Gate, Snow White stepped on the void and arrived in front of Lin Jun. Xidagarba pointed at Lin Jun. "This person is the enemy of our endless race. Your Highness, you mustn't accept his kindness." Lin Jun was also looking at Snow White at this moment. He could clearly feel the powerful star power on Snow White's body. During the Hall of Fame's arena competition, Snow White's star power had reached more than 8 billion, and now it was close to 10 billion. But this wasn't important. What was important was that Lin Jun felt that Snow White seemed to have changed into a different person. Facing him, Lin Jun realized that she didn't recognize him at all. Oh no, it's Soul Lock. Soon, Lin Jun saw the problem in Snow White's eyes. Her eyes were unfocused, and her mind was out of place. There was light, but no spirit. This was clearly the sign of Soul Lock. Snow White's spirit power had reached the peak of Azure. The person who could lock her soul lock had to have Emerald Ray level spirit power. In other words, only God could do it. Facing this kind of spirit power soul lock, even Lin Jun, who was proficient in this path, was helpless. That was the difference in absolute power. Unless Lin Jun's spirit power was not inferior to the person who locked Snow White's soul lock, he couldn't break it at all. After Snow White received Xidagarba's order, her cold and ruthless eyes locked onto Lin Jun. "Lin Jun, enemy, kill." In the next second, Snow White had already arrived above Lin Jun's head and slashed with her long sword. Lin Jun raised the drunken spear, two-headed snake, to defend. Xidagarba and the others were ready to surround Lin Jun from behind and completely end him. "Xidagarba, you guys are shameless enough. Do you really think that there's no one left in our surface race?" During the conversation, a few figures appeared. The surface races Jiuxuan, Multi-Armed, and Xiong arrived at the West Gate. The three of them faced Xidagarba, Yao Guang, and Great Burning Heaven. Xidagarba's expression changed. He knew that such a situation would definitely happen. Without the restraint of the few Perfection Stage experts, and even Snow White was transferred over, the other party's Perfection Stage experts would definitely be able to free up and come to support Lin Jun. But at this moment, both sides had no choice. Let their fists decide everything. 3 against 3, the 6 of them soon became entangled in a fierce battle. When Jiuxuan attacked, he said to Lin Jun, "Lin Jun, settle your own matters." This princess of the endless race encountered the Ju Tian in order to send your son back. Do as you deem fit. Lin Jun smiled bitterly. Snow White's attacks were ferocious. It was not easy to defeat her. Snow White's current strength had already surpassed ordinary Perfection Stage experts. In Lin Jun's opinion, her strength was about the same as Xidagarba's. 8 people, 4 against 4. The battles in other places had already entered a stalemate. Those ordinary warriors had also stopped. They were waiting for the result of the battle at the West Gate. As long as one side won, the other side would be annihilated. Chapter 1070. Snow White's attack on Lin Jun could be said to have pushed her strength to the limit. Lin Jun immediately activated his holy domain. Snow White also activated her holy domain at the same time. After activating their holy domains, the difference between their star powers wasn't very big. Lin Jun had 17 billion star powers, while Snow White had 15 billion star powers. More than 1 billion star powers couldn't play a decisive role, especially when Lin Jun had some misgivings. The turbulent air currents in the narrow space shot out. Almost no one below perfection could get close to the West Gate. Outside the holy capital, the protective barrier was about to collapse. There was only a faint layer of light enveloping it. In fact, when Jiu Xuan and the others came to the west gate to support Lin Jun, they had already given up on guarding the protective barrier. Now, the number of endless races didn't exceed 40 billion, and their consumption was very high. Even if they fought in the streets, the surface races could still hold on for a long time. As long as they could win at the west gate, everything would be reversed. However, the reality wasn't that simple. Xidagarba, Alcade, and Burning Sky joined forces and vaguely suppressed Jiu Xuan, multi-armed, and Xiangjing. Xiangjing was the #1 person in the Hall of Fame of the surface races, but he was still a little far from perfection. Perhaps after this battle, Xiangjing's strength would increase again, but that was a matter for the future. Seeing that Lin Jun was entangled by Snow White and couldn't escape, Xidagarba finally relaxed. As long as Lin Jun didn't break through, the three of them would be able to defeat Jiu Xuan and the others sooner or later. At that time, they would join forces to attack Lin Jun. This battle would be a sure win. However, before Xidagarba could do anything, Lin Jun changed. Lin Jun used the 7 styles of Burial God on Snow White. After a stunning broken spear style by Shue's blood and Qi churn from the impact. However, she quickly found a flaw in Lin Jun's defense. Disregarding her own safety, she charged forward, only to fall right into Lin Jun's trap. Spear retraction. A sudden counterattack was launched. The spear retraction style was the strongest counterattack technique in the 7 styles of God Burial. It was extremely strange and difficult to defend against. Even with Snow White's current strength, she was unable to block it. Moreover, Lin Jun had decisively fired this shot, and there was no return. It was obvious that he was aiming to kill Snow White. Pooh! A dark red dot appeared on Snow White's neck, and then a ray of star power pierced through her throat. The sword in the air involuntarily stopped. Lin Jun raised his hand in the air, and a ball of biting cold air enveloped Snow White, sealing her body in a ball of ice. Your mental strength is still under control, so we can only seal it temporarily. Cold is your forte, so you should rest here for a while. With another raise of his hand, the cold air that had condensed into a large ice cube was directly absorbed into the divine realm by Lin Jun. When Xidagarba saw this scene, he angrily pointed at Lin Jun and scolded, "You ungrateful thing! Snow White saved your son, but you killed her." Lin Jun sneered, "If I cowered and didn't dare to make a move, wouldn't I be falling into your trap? Besides, you guys are really brainless. You clearly know that I'm a god-level alchemist who can resurrect the dead, yet you still dare to use such a method to scheme against me. Aren't you asking for trouble?" Xidagarba choked. There were many considerations when he asked Snow White to fight. Ever since Snow White saved Lin Jun's son, Xidagarba suspected that there was something wrong with this matter. If Snow White fought, presumably Lin Jun would not be able to kill her. This was a common problem for people who valued relationships. Lin Jun had a family and parents, so he must be a person who valued relationships. Xidagarba thought that he saw it very clearly. Even if Lin Jun wanted to deal with Snow White, it would not be so simple. After all, Snow White already had the strength of perfection, so it would not be easy to deal with her. However, he did not expect that Lin Jun would decisively kill Snow White with a thunderous method and seal her away. It was obvious that he would revive her in the future. This made all his calculations go down the drain. The current situation was 4 against 3. Xidagarba knew that they had no chance of winning. While there was still time, it was important to escape. Xidagarba and the other 2 looked at each other and left the battle group at the same time. They rushed out of the west gate of the holy capital like the wind and went straight in the direction of the Heaven Realm River. The warriors of the 2 races who had been paying attention to this battle also knew what to do at this moment. Since the leader had run away, the rest of the people would not stay here to die. These warriors also roared at the same time and began to run in unison. Once they ran, they were destined to not have the ability to capture the holy capital. At this time, the Heavenly Fire War finally entered the stage of a strategic counterattack. The entire dimensional universe was in a frenzy. All the races on the ground were almost crazy. For nearly half a year, they were worried every moment that the endless race army would break into the holy capital and then invade with irresistible force. Sooner or later, the entire universe would fall. Now, this worry could finally be dispelled. The holy capital would not be broken, but the endless race would have to worry about whether their devil capital would be broken. All these changes came from Lin Jun. It was his appearance that saved the fate of the races on the ground. He turned the tide and helped the building collapse. Only when the sea is turbulent can the true colors of a hero be revealed. People could not wait to add all the praises to Lin Jun. He was their hero. Compared to the crazy celebration of the races on the ground in the dimensional universe, the people of the endless race fell into panic. Now that the situation had reversed, it was their turn to worry. The Joshwan had already commanded everyone to kill their way out of the holy capital and chase after the endless race army that had fled in the direction of the celestial realm river. If Lin Jun and the others won, then would the army of the surface race attack the territory of the endless race? Would they not even be able to guard the last place in the endless sea of stars? Countless years ago, when the two races fought a decisive battle, the fear of being driven to the endless sea of stars once again lingered in their hearts. This time, they would have no way to retreat. Perhaps they could only be exterminated. Just as the endless race was panicking, the Ju Tian Great Emperor stood up again. My compatriots, don't worry. Although we have temporarily lost our strategic advantage, our overall strength is still above that of the surface race. As long as we can firmly guard Devil Capital, the surface race will not be able to cause any trouble. With the Ju Tian's speech, the hearts of the terrified people of the endless race gradually calmed down. Yes, as long as they guarded Devil Capital, this battle would be far from over. Although the endless race only had more than 30 billion people left, the surface race only had more than 20 billion people left. If these people came to attack Devil Capital, they would only be sending themselves to their deaths. Attacking was not feasible for the time being, but defending was definitely not a problem. The people of the endless race received a cardiac stimulant and immediately mobilized, preparing to collect Godstones and transport them to the front line to fight a protracted battle with the surface race. Jiuxuan's pursuit of the endless race did not have much effect at the Celestial Realm River. After all, the overall strength of the endless race was still above that of the surface race. If the pursuit was too ruthless, it would be easy for them to bite back. Even Lin Jun's rapid killing method was not of much use in such a chaotic situation, and it was easy for him to accidentally injure his own people. Therefore, in the end, he could only watch as the people of the endless race fled back to Devil Capital, closed the city gates, activated the protective shield, and prepared to fight a protracted battle. When Jiuxian saw this kind of situation, he was also completely at a loss on what to do. If the surface race attacked Devil Capital, they would be sending themselves to their deaths. Seeing that the surface race had stopped attacking, the silent, endless race clamored again. The Celestial Flame War is not over yet. Just you wait. Lin Jun, you don't have to be arrogant. Although we can't control you now, you will become a god sooner or later. When you become a god, you can't stay in the Celestial Flame continent. Let's see how you die then. That's right, Devil Capital is now heavily guarded and impregnable. You can't attack at all. Let's just waste time like this 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, until you die. Ha ha. In the face of the crazy clamor of the endless race, the people of the surface race were very angry. They had been suppressed for so long and suffered countless casualties. In the end, after the other party retreated, there was nothing they could do. This kind of grievance was unbearable. Lin Jun, is there no other way? Jiuxuan came to Lin Jun's side. Lin Jun had a good impression of Jiuxuan. This person had taken his son, Lin Ping, from Snow White and sent him back to the rear. This was worthy of Lin Jun's gratitude. Lin Jun looked at Jiuxuan. There is still a way. Brother Jiuxuan, prepare to celebrate your victory. What did you say? Jiuxuan could hardly believe his ears. I said, their clamor is over. Get the army ready and follow me at any time. After saying that, Lin Jun suddenly soared into the sky and went straight to the sky above Devil Capital. When the endless race warriors guarding Devil Capital saw Lin Jun coming, they immediately roared loudly. Lin Jun is here! Quick, quick! Kill him! He can't attack us now, so it's a good time to be a live target. Attack! Countless attacks blasted toward Lin Jun through the protective shield. However, Lin Jun's immortal tyrant body did not care about these weak attacks at all. Ordinary Hall of the Exalted could not shake him at all, let alone these insignificant characters. The black hole spiraled. Lin Jun opened his hands, and a strange scene appeared. In the sky above Devil Capital, about 100 million kilometers away, an incomparably huge star appeared. This was not an illusion, but a real star. It was even much bigger than ordinary stars. A huge star. Lin Jun looked straight at the endless race who were still stubbornly resisting below and sneered. If you want to fight us to the end, then have a taste of this. Really? Starfall. Chapter 1071. Lin Jun's true Starfall was the most powerful move among all his martial arts techniques. After 300 years of condensation, a huge star was formed in the black hole. Once it was released, it would form a power that could destroy heaven and earth. When this star fell, it covered the entire demonic city. Its volume was even a few hundred times larger than the sun. When the light bloomed and pressed down, everyone was dumbfounded. God, this isn't an illusion, right? Is this still an attack that a martial artist can release? Am I seeing a god's punishment? Some people rubbed their eyes in disbelief. They found it hard to accept that Lin Jun had unleashed such a powerful attack. The martial artists in Demonic City were completely dumbfounded. This star was huge and boundless. It covered the sky and the sun as it pressed down. Could Demonic City's protective shield withstand the test? Moreover, it was obvious that the elemental energy in the star was about to explode. This star was about to explode. Quick, quick, quick! Place all the god stones on it. You must withstand it, withstand it. As long as you withstand this attack, the races on the ground won't have any more tricks up their sleeves. This must be Lin Jun's trump card. If I'm still alive after today, I'll definitely choose to be an ordinary person. Under the witness of the entire universe, the star crashed into Demonic City's protective shield and exploded. Light that filled the entire heavenly fire continent. Light that filled the entire dimensional universe. The only thing that all the recording devices could capture at this moment was the dazzling light. That was if the device had not been destroyed in this explosion. The violent tremors lasted for a full 30 minutes. The sea of clouds in the heavenly realm river churned. The heavenly fire continent was shrouded in fire clouds. Before anyone could see the situation in Demonic City, the formation outside the heavenly fire continent was broken. Above the heavenly realm river, the heavenly fire city that had gathered the power of the gods and hidden in another dimension descended once again. The descent of the heavenly fire city not only announced the end of the heavenly fire war, but it also stabilized the heavenly fire continent that was about to split apart from the explosion. After the descent of the heavenly fire city, the situation in Demonic City gradually became clear. In this starfall, Demonic City had been razed to the ground. However, at the last moment, the countless races in Demonic City were transported away. The deities took action and forcefully interfered. The great war of heavenly fire did not allow the gods to forcefully interfere. The result of forcefully interfering was failure. Thus, the interference of the countless races was also a failure. At this point, the heavenly fire war that had lasted for half a year finally came to an end. The surface races, who had lost several times in a row, finally managed to turn the tables with Lin Jun's strong performance. Moreover, it was a crucial match. The heavenly fire war this time not only decided the ownership of the heavenly fire mining area, but the winner even had the right to propose attacking the enemy's hinterland, and the gods were not allowed to interfere. However, they did not expect that both sides would be exhausted from this battle. Both the surface race and the endless race had almost no power to chase after them. With just 20 to 30 billion divine transformation martial artists remaining, Wanting to conquer the vast universe was nothing more than a pipe dream. Without the main force, continuing the pursuit would only be courting death. Being able to occupy the sky fire mining area was actually a very good harvest. Of course, the surface races still had an advantage because they still had Lin Jun. Lin Jun's powerful martial strength had clearly surpassed the perfection level. He even felt that he could contend with a lesser god. If he could casually release that huge star just now, perhaps even a superior god would not be able to suppress him. With a strong point like Lin Jun, the endless race was very worried. They were worried that Lin Jun would continue to punish them. However, they were surprised to find that after the Heavenly Fire Continent's array formation dispersed, Lin Jun actually disappeared. Everyone searched everywhere, but there was no trace of Lin Jun. Only the surface race's commander-in-chief, Jiao Xuan, received a message from Lin Jun. Lin Jun was very grateful to him for sending his son, Lin Ping, back. He remembered this matter in his heart. As for the future situation of the Heavenly Fire Continent, Lin Jun would no longer participate. In fact, when the war began, although the endless race was ambitious, some discerning people could see that it was impossible for them to truly defeat the surface race. This was because their numbers were limited, and most of the people in this universe were still from the surface race. Even if they won this war, they could not suppress the surface race forever. The final result would definitely be like this. It would be a slightly awkward end. After a short negotiation, the endless race withdrew from the Heavenly Fire Continent. From then on, the Heavenly Fire Continent and the nearby mining areas all belonged to the surface race. And the endless race was not too worried. As long as Lin Jun did not participate with the remaining strength of the surface race, there was no possibility of them pursuing and offending him. After such a huge expenditure, they also needed to conserve their energy and have a good rest. However, the accumulation of a warrior was not so easy. This accumulation might take hundreds of millions or billions of years. After the Heavenly Fire War ended, the surface race fell into a frenzy. They did not expect to occupy the distant starry skies of the endless sea of stars. It was too big, and they did not know how many there were. They only needed to protect what they had. The war that seemed to be a sure loss was reversed after Lin Jun appeared. Lin Jun had already become a national hero. In any corner of the entire primordial realm, as long as the dimensional universe was connected, his name could be seen and his voice could be heard. To be able to know Lin Jun was a great honor. It was a capital that made people envious. If they did not have the opportunity to know Lin Jun, it was also an honor to have seen Lin Jun before. They could brag about it after a meal. Even staying on the same planet as Lin Jun and going to places that Lin Jun had gone before were all topics of conversation. On some small planets, various training classes were set up. Lin Jun Martial Arts School is recruiting students. Sign up quickly. Private instructor imparting the immovable mountain spear technique to you. Do you want to have the same awe-inspiring strength as Hero Lin Jun? Immovable mountain, you deserve it. Sun Ridge Alchemy School has started classes. Sun Ridge Alchemy School has started classes. Hero Lin Jun's hometown's alchemy secret book will be taught by a senior instructor who once worked as an apprentice in Sky Square City's medicine store under Lin Jun's name. 300 years of teaching guaranteed mastery. You will easily become a grade 5 alchemist. Lin Jun's name resounded throughout the universe. At one point, there was a trend of excessive consumption. At this moment, a voice from the primordial realm's surface stopped such behavior. The person who spoke was Lin Jun's fifth senior brother, Jean Nua, who practiced martial arts in the sacred land of Fallen Star Lake. Jean Nua announced to the entire universe through the dimensional universe that Lin Jun had officially taken over his position and inherited the sacred land of Fallen Star Lake's position. From today onwards, Lin Jun would oversee the sacred land of Fallen Star Lake and would not casually go out until the next sacred land of Fallen Star Lake's position. During this period, any news about Lin Jun's so-called classes were all fake and did not need to be paid attention to. This news dealt a huge blow to some people who wanted to use Lin Jun's name to profit. It also made many people clap their hands in joy. After learning that Lin Jun would guard the sacred land of Fallen Star Lake and would not go out, the popularity of Lin Jun in the universe gradually died down. In the vast universe, countless things happened every day. No one person or event could occupy people's attention for a long time. 1 year, 2 years, 8 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years, everything would become history. Peace was also very rare for a martialist. At the very least, Lin Jun was one of them. Back mountain of the sacred land of Fallen Star Lake, Jingxin sect. Winding bamboo paths extended on the surface of the river. Auspicious clouds drifted in the sky, and red-crowned cranes danced in the sky. Occasionally, golden scales would swim under the clear river water. If one's eyesight was poor, one might think that the golden scales were fish. However, when that huge tail swung out of the water, one would notice that the creature under the water was actually a dragon. Whoosh! Jean Nuor raised her hand, and a rhinoceros armor beast was directly thrown out. It attracted 2 golden dragons and 1 silver dragon to fight over it. In the end, a golden dragon succeeded and swallowed the rhinoceros armor beast in 1 gulp. It swayed its head proudly and entered the water. Stretching her arm, Jean Nuor sighed. After more than 10 million years, I'm finally leaving this place. I didn't feel it before I left, but now that I'm leaving, I suddenly miss it. Beside Jean Nuor, Lin Jun smiled and said, since 5th senior brother can't bear to leave, then you can continue to oversee the sacred land. Don't worry, I can pretend that I didn't hear what you said previously. Hey, kid, you can't go back on your word. This matter has already been announced to the entire Yuan realm. It's a done deal. There's no room for regret. Besides, I'm just lamenting. I still have to leave. Jean Nuor said proudly. This Jingxin sect is a treasure place for cultivation. Senior brother, I'm handing it over to you today. Cultivate well here. Looking at Jean Nuor, who was about to be liberated and showing off, Lin Jun said gloomily, it seems that I have to look for a new sacred land to oversee and liberate myself as soon as possible. Then you'll have to wait. My 15 million years is already the fastest. I hope you can gain something in 50 million years. After Jean Nuor gave Lin Jun a blow, she comforted Lin Jun, Junior brother. Now I can also call you Junior brother. I want to tell you that overseeing the sacred land is not as boring as you think. When you reach this stage, you will soon realize that there's actually a whole new world in front of you. A whole new world? That's right. The so-called new world is the world of the gods. Only when you reach this level will you understand the vastness of the world and the vastness of the universe. Only then will you understand the meaning of cultivation. Only then will you have higher pursuits and will not lose the motivation to move forward because of invincibility. Then, 5th senior brother, are you going to that new world now? Jean Nuor patted Lin Jun's shoulder. That's right. Everyone has to have pursuits. I've already passed on to you all the things you need to know to be overseeing the sacred land through the dimensional universe. Everything that follows will depend on you. After saying that, Jean Nuor turned around and stepped into the void to leave. Chapter 1072. Meteor Lake Holy Land, 33 Heavens Pagoda. Lin Jun's domain of divinity was fully opened, and his star energy reached 17 billion stars, completely suppressing the divine stone stage Heaven Lord. Shaking spear form, the 2-headed snake in his hand danced, and spear shadows erupted, covering the Heaven Lord with wounds. Sweeping spear form, spear lights were released and withdrawn, and the spear head turned into the spear tail, and the spear tail turned into the spear head. With a swing of his hand, the Heaven Lord, who had taken advantage of the opening, was struck to the ground by Lin Jun's spear. Falling spear form, a silver river descended from the 9 heavens, and a spear fell from the sky, killing the Heaven Lord. The scene before him changed, and Lin Jun passed the 24th floor of the 33 Heavens Pagoda. The 24th floor could be said to be the most difficult floor of the 33 Heavens Pagoda. All experts below the God Realm were stuck here. Even those at the Great Perfection Realm could forget about passing the 24th floor. This was a publicly acknowledged fact. That was because the Heaven Lord on the 24th floor had a star energy of 10 billion stars, and all his martial skills were cultivated to the strongest level below the God realm. He had no weaknesses, and he had no fear. He could display his strongest strength at any time, making him undefeatable. Lin Jun, as a late-stage divine stone stage cultivator, had passed the 24th floor. This in itself was a miracle. After passing the 24th floor and arriving at the 25th floor, Nie Tian saw a spirit reader with a blurry face. No, it wasn't just a spirit reader. This spirit reader was also holding a sword in his hand. Not only was he holding a sword, but he also had horns on his head. He was also an astral beast, although Nie Tian couldn't tell what type he was. A spirit reader that could use a sword and was an astral beast with an extremely strong physique. Nie Tian wondered if he was also proficient in elements and domains. He was simply another Heaven Lord. Most importantly, he was a lower god, a peak lower god. This was the guardian of the 25th floor of the 33 Heavens Pagoda, a lower god of divine crystal. The so-called lower god of divine crystal didn't rely on their own strength to become a god. Instead, they relied on divine crystals to break through. However, this guardian wasn't an ordinary lower god. He was proficient in all martial skills and had no weaknesses. Moreover, his star energy definitely exceeded 10 billion stars, and this was under the condition that he didn't open his domain. Lin Jun knew that this guardian wasn't easy to deal with. However, he didn't expect that the other party subordinate would send out a mental attack. Amidst the azure color, there was a trace of emerald light spiritual energy. This bit of emerald light's power was enough to break down Lin Jun's mental defenses, causing Lin Jun's head to spin. His momentary daze was enough. Following that, a sword light flashed past, and Lin Jun was eliminated. He was able to crush the guardian of the 24th floor, but he was no match for the guardian of the 25th floor. From the 24th level onwards, every level of the 33 Heavens Pagoda required an enormous leap in strength. Level 25 was a demigod. Level 26 was also a demigod. However, the guardian of level 26 was a demigod who had broken through to become a deity on his own. The 27th and 28th floors were guarded by gods, while the 29th and 30th floors were guarded by high gods. If 24% was a hurdle, then the 30th level was definitely another hurdle. If one could pass through all 30 levels, then this person's strength would definitely be unimaginably strong. After retreating from the 33 Heavens Pagoda, Lin Jun returned to the meditation house and sat down cross-legged. As expected, I'm still far from it. I thought that with my strength, I would be able to match an ordinary lesser god. However, the Protector is no ordinary lesser god. This 25th level represents the limit of the divine crystal breakthrough. In addition, I have another shortcoming. That is my spiritual energy. If my spiritual energy had reached the emerald light level, I might have had a chance to fight against this demigod. However, the difference in spiritual energy makes it so that I'm not a match for a deity, especially one who specializes in spiritual energy. I have no chance at all. As he thought of this, Lin Jun thought of Snow White. By now, Lin Ping and Lin and had both returned. In addition, Lin Jun had brought Ning Qingxian here a month ago to live with his other family members. Su Mingyue and Ning had long known of Ning Qingshuan's existence. They could understand and accept this matter very well. Although Ning Qingxian liked peace and quiet, she was still willing to interact with everyone for Lin Jun's sake. Now, Lin Jun's family could be said to be harmonious. However, Snow White still cannot wake up. Lin Jun did not dare to revive her at all. This was because Snow White's soul was still locked by spiritual energy. If he wanted to break it, he had to have a spiritual strength that was not lower than the user's. Emerald Light. I must reach it. Lin Jun had already taken over the Holy Land of Fallen Star for a month. It was only today that he finished sorting out all the messy matters and began to cultivate in peace. Although Jin Nuo had announced that Lin Jun would take over as the guardian of the Holy Land, Lin Jun knew that he was just a temporary worker. This was because he, who had yet to become a deity, had yet to meet the master of the Holy Land of Fallen Star. Without seeing the master, he felt a little uncertain about being the guardian. However, Jean Nuo did not give any instructions. He did not know what deeper meaning there was. However, in this position, Lin Jun came into contact with many secrets that he could not have known before. His position as the guardian of the Holy Land was almost the highest authority in the dimensional universe. There were too many things that he could consult. He knew that there were many ancient families in this universe that were controlled by gods. For example, when Lin Jun had just entered the Divine Change Realm, he felt that the Divine Change Realm was a very mysterious world. However, when he arrived here, he realized that there were so many Divine Change powerhouses. Just like the Hall of the Exalted. When he first arrived at the endless battlefield, he felt that the Hall of the Exalted was the peak below gods. Later on, he realized that there were also many people who had reached the Hall of the Exalted level over the years. This time, the Hall of the Exalted expanded to 300 members. That was the result of control. If it was not controlled, there would be 30,000 to 30,000 members. A martial artist's longevity was accumulated over countless years. This number was definitely shocking. How many powerhouses had become gods? There must be more than the Hall of the Exalted. Because divinity crystals could be absorbed and refined, this was a shortcut. Logically speaking, the number of gods would continue to increase and not decrease. This was because when a person became a god, even if he died, his divinity crystals could still create another god. There were many low-level gods and relatively few mid-level gods. High-level gods were very rare. The reason why people could not come into contact with gods in their daily world was because gods did not move around where ordinary martial artists were. They were all in specific galaxies. For example, the Witch Galaxy, which was closest to the fallen star Lake's Holy Land, was 5 million light-years away from Lin Jun's head in the northwest direction. That was a specific galaxy. The Witch Galaxy was very huge, with a diameter of 3 million light-years. Even Lin Jun's hometown, the Milky Way, was only 100,000 light-years in diameter. That was already boundless. However, this galaxy that was 3 million light-years in diameter was unimaginably huge. The surrounding star region was completely enveloped by a special power. Ordinary people's spaceships could not reach it. Only those who knew the specific route and the way to travel could reach it. That was the world of the gods. This kind of galaxy was actually a world ruled by a juggernaut. Every juggernaut had lived for an incalculable amount of time. The people who lived there did not even know that there was a wider universe beyond their galaxy. Even if some knew, they did not yearn for it. This was because the outside world was far less exciting than the world they lived in. The specific galaxies and the rest of the primordial realm were two different dimensions. Even the Dimensional Universe Corporation, which covered almost the entire primordial realm, could not cover the specific galaxies ruled by the juggernauts. Other than the specific galaxies, there were also areas where the gods were active. These were the dangerous places of the universe. There were 3 forbidden areas in the entire primordial realm: the Sea of Constellations, the Dark Light World, and the Beast King Prison. These 3 forbidden areas were hell for ordinary martial artists. Many gods were active in the depths of these places. From what Lin Jun saw in the meditation house, he knew that Jean Nuo had left Meteor Lake to head to the Dark Light World. After staying in Meteor Lake for so many years, Jean Nuo had long yearned to go out and explore. Before Jean Nuo, some of the seniors in Meteor Lake had made a name for themselves in the specific galaxies, while others had earned a place in the forbidden areas. All of these made Jean Nuo very envious. Now that he had finally caught Lin Jun, the coolie, he was finally liberated. Jean Nuo's departure also made the guards of the other 3 sacred lands envious. They were doing their best to nurture their successors, preparing to become lower gods as soon as possible so that they could leave the sacred lands. In principle, one had to become a god to become a guard of the sacred lands. Although Lin Jun had not become a god, he already had strength that was not inferior to an ordinary lower god. Jean Nuo had also skirted around the edges and forcefully shoved this position to Lin Jun. He did not even report this to his teacher. It was a unilateral decision. The way he saw it, His teacher was very resourceful and would definitely know the situation here. Since he did not say anything, it meant that he had tacitly agreed. Even if his teacher did not agree, what was done could not be undone. He probably would not do anything to him. By the time Lin Jun knew that he had picked up a hot potato, Jean Nua had already run away and even closed the dimensional universe. Obviously, he did not want Lin Jun to look for him again. Lin Jun came to the peak of meteor-picking island alone. This place was about 1,000,000 kilometers above sea level. But every time a star fell, the huge waves of Meteor Lake would sometimes sweep under the feet. A star shone with the last of its light and heat as it fell into Meteor Lake about 100 kilometers away. Then, it was quickly swallowed by the waves. Lin Jun's mental power spread out and quickly enveloped Meteor-Picking Island. The situation in this martial arts sacred lands was in full view. The students' hard work in cultivation, the servants' hard work, and the 33 Heavens Pagoda's relentless challenges. There were also the friendly conversations and laughter of his family members outside of cultivation. All of this was in Lin Jun's eyes, but his heart was already yearning for an even bigger world. The universe's forbidden land, the galaxy where the Juggernaut resides. I will go there sooner or later. But before that, I still have a long way to go and many things to do. Chapter 1073. After the great battle of the heavenly fire, people gradually realized how difficult it was to break through and become a god on their own. Too many people chose to give up. They began to use up all their wealth in hopes of obtaining a divine crystal. As long as they cultivated to the peak of the divine stone stage, a divine crystal would be their only hope. However, divine crystals were not that easy to obtain. Aside from some special occasions, there was almost no way to obtain them. Countless experts were stuck at the divine crystal stage, and those who obtained the divine crystal treated it as a family heirloom. They would rather keep it in their hands and be so poor that they couldn't even afford to eat than sell it. Lin Jun obtained the longest amount of free time he had ever had since he started cultivating. The Sacred Land Guard was nominally in charge of the huge Fallen Star Lake Sacred Land, but in reality, he was only a spiritual leader. He did not need to worry about the specific affairs of the Sacred Land. For countless years, the inertia of the Fallen Star Lake Sacred Land had been enough to support this colossus to continue moving forward. There were specific people in charge of all the affairs. The martial artists here had endless lifespans. They would not fall sick or be attacked by other forces. It was as stable as a pool of stagnant water. The sacred land would only be lively once every 10 years. Countless martial artists from all over the world would come because of its reputation and dream of joining the Fallen Star Lake to become a member of the sacred land. Every sacred land martial arts competition was a grand occasion. Previously, when Jean Nua was around, it might have been too boring. Every time there was such a lively event, he would always participate. However, Lin Jun did not have such a hobby. His hobby was cultivation. He did not care about these affairs at all. Every year, there would be martial artists that would graduate and leave. There would also be martial artists that would join. Every day, there would be people that would challenge new levels of the 33 Heavens Pagoda. Although this seemed important, it wasn't enough to enter Lin Jun's eyes. Only in the first 2 years did Lin Jun occasionally pay attention. However, he gradually lost interest. In his opinion, the performances of these longevity and three-flower martialists were not of any interest to him. It was like a world boxing champion. Occasionally, he would find it funny when he saw children fight. However, after laughing a few times, he would not laugh anymore. The only things that could really interest him were things that belonged to his level. For example, activities such as the Star of Divine Punishment and the Eye of the Storm were not within the scope of Lin Jun's attention. He would only communicate with his family occasionally, telling them to seize the time to cultivate. Everyone had to at least reach the peak of Divine Stone. As long as his family members could reach the peak of Divine Level Stone, he would give them the Divine Crystals and let them break through to God. However, that would take a very long time. The Jingxin sect was gradually covered in dust. Lin Jun had entered a state of death seclusion. Information regarding Lin Jun gradually decreased in the dimensional universe. As he had become a guard of the Holy Land, his existence was equivalent to that of a god. His image and information began to be deleted or encrypted by the Dimensional Universe Corporation. Those who did not have enough authority would not be able to search for information about Lin Jun. Even if they managed to find something, it would only be a few words and rumors circulating on the forums. In the first year, people were still very enthusiastic about discussing Lin Jun. 10 years later, the huge popularity brought about by Lin Jun gradually decreased. 30 years later, there was still no news about Lin Jun. The people discussing Lin Jun also gradually decreased. People's attention began to shift to the rising experts. 100 years later, many people began to forget about Lin Jun. Even within the Holy Land of Fallen Star Lake, people would not often remember that the guard of the Holy Land was now 6th senior brother Lin Jun. Lin Jun was also happy with such a situation. This was because his cultivation progress was the fastest when he was not disturbed. 24 times the speed of time allowed him to have enough time at his disposal. After 10 years of seclusion, Lin Jun's spiritual power still did not break through. However, his realm had another breakthrough. He entered the peak of Divine Stone from the late stage of Divine Stone. After reaching the peak of Divine Stone, Lin Jun's star power increased again. It reached an unprecedented 12 billion star power. Logically speaking, reaching this realm meant that one was on the verge of becoming a god. However, Lin Jun knew that there were no signs of a breakthrough. He still had a long way to go before he could become a god. At the very least, it was impossible for him to break through without sufficient spiritual power. A brownish-black spaceship glided through space. There was an eagle head symbol on the spaceship. It should be the emblem of a certain family. However, such an emblem seemed to have never appeared in the universe. On the spaceship, a group of human warriors was talking. "Young master, we will reach the primordial realm after flying for another day." A red-haired warrior stood in front of the control panel. The ground had already appeared on the screen. "How many divine stones do we have left in the spaceship?" the red-haired warrior asked. "Young master, we don't have much left. We can only support the spaceship's flight for 10 days. The red-haired warrior nodded. "It seems that we have to replenish our supplies on the primordial realm surface. Only when we have enough divine stones and other supplies can we return to the Witch Star system. Otherwise, our spaceship will become a ghost ship drifting in space." "Young master, we don't quite understand. If we want to replenish our divine stones, it would be easier to find them in the endless sea of stars. The people there are more or less experienced. Perhaps we can find someone we can communicate with." The red-haired warrior sneered. "How long have you left the Demon Star system? You only have a smattering of knowledge about the outside world. Although it's easy to find divine stones in the endless sea of stars, the targets there are scattered. I'm afraid that our spaceship will run aground before we can find enough divine stones. Moreover, we are already close to the surface through the wormhole." As he spoke, the red-haired warrior pointed at a bright white area. "As for the person you mentioned who can communicate with, it might be difficult to find them elsewhere. However, we can definitely find them here." "That's the ocean?" "No, this place is called Fallen Star Lake. It's the sacred land of martial arts on the primordial realm's surface. According to what I know, every sacred land has a guard. Only those who have reached the level of lower god can take up the position. Such a person will definitely know something special. When the time comes, we will go over and find him." A few of his subordinates became excited when they heard that. That's not bad. I hope that the guard of the sacred land here is someone who has seen the world. If he doesn't even know about our Pampas family, that would be too disappointing. Perhaps he might not know about our Pampas family. However, as long as he knows that we are from the Witch Star system, he should know that we are people he can't afford to offend. He will definitely cooperate with us." As the subordinates discussed, the red-haired warrior, Pampas, nodded slightly. There was a faint energy fluctuation on his body. Chapter 1074. In Jingxin sect, Lin Jun was talking to Feng Qingwan. "Lin Jun, I'll say this first. You can only study this thing for 3 days. After 3 days, I'll stop the transmission. Otherwise, if senior sister finds out, it'll be terrible. She'll definitely get angry. Don't worry, Yuan. I will only comprehend it in these 3 days. After 3 days, it will definitely be over. You also know that whether I can achieve anything in my spiritual power, I can only rely on this. Well, I know. I believe you won't tell others. Then I will start. Let's start. Luan Er's image disappeared, and a spatial imprint had been sent to Lin Zhan's god realm. Lin Zhan was overjoyed. What Feng Qingwan sent back was the real environment imprint of the 2 swaying trees in the Twin Trees Garden. After so many years in the Fallen Star Lake, Lin Zhan's cultivation gains were not small. His realm had really reached the peak of the Godstone realm, and he could no longer make any progress. If he wanted to make further progress, he could only become a god. He had also comprehended nearly half of the 9th picture of the Shadowless Steppes. After all, 100 years was almost equivalent to more than 2,000 years for him. It was normal to have this result. However, his spiritual power was still unable to make a breakthrough. His spiritual power had already reached the peak of the Sky Blue realm, but the Jade Ray belonged to the God realm. It was easier said than done to break through. Lin Zhan now lacked the cultivation method of the God realm, so he had to think of another way in terms of spiritual power. The 2 swaying trees in the Twin Trees Garden were the most mysterious place in the 4 great holy lands. It was the best place to cultivate spiritual power. It was almost impossible for outsiders to obtain the environmental imprint of the Twin Trees Garden. The so-called true environment imprint required a person to completely cover that environment with their spiritual energy. Then, they would connect with Lin Zhan's aura in the God realm and send their influence into the God realm so that Lin Zhan could comprehend it through the God realm. During this period of time, the 2 of them could not be disturbed. They had to be completely focused, and it was impossible for those who were not close to them to do so. Only Little Phoenix, a woman who loved her deeply and who did not adhere to the rules of etiquette, was able to give Lin Zhan such a big advantage. Thanks to the absence of Feng Fei, the 4th lady of the Shuangshu Garden, Feng Qingwan was able to do it. There was no time to lose. Lin Zhan immediately used his spiritual power to enter the God realm and arrived at the Twin Trees Garden. As soon as his thoughts arrived, it was as if he had really arrived under the 2 swaying trees. Feng Qingwan's consciousness sensed Lin Zhan's arrival and immediately transmitted a message. The Twin Trees Garden is all about comprehension. I've been in the Twin Trees Garden for so many years, and I've gained something new almost every day. In the next 3 days, I'll be teleported away, so I won't be able to talk to you. Whatever you can comprehend will be up to your own luck. I believe you won't have such an opportunity again. Don't worry, I'll do my best. Feng Qingwan's aura disappeared, leaving Lin Zhan alone in the Twin Trees Garden. There's really nothing we can do about it. I hope we can succeed this time. Lin Zhan strolled to the center of the 2 swaying trees. Of the 2 trees in Lin Zhan's line of sight, one was lush and full of vitality. As for the other tree, its leaves were withered and its branches were withered. It looked like it was dead. The ground was the same, and the surrounding flowers and plants were the same. But the 2 trees were alive and dead, one flourishing and one withered. It gave a very strong visual contrast. Standing here, it was like having 1 foot in the netherworld and 1 foot in the world of the living. For a moment, Lin Zhan felt that his spiritual power was beating. The silent sky blue spiritual power was showing signs of activity. What a mystical place. Lin Zhan closed his eyes slightly, and the wind flowed around him. He instinctively came to the tree that was full of vitality and sat down. He wanted to comprehend the mystery here, but he felt that everything was like looking at flowers in a fog. He couldn't grasp the key point. Time passed quietly, and 2 days passed in the blink of an eye. The sky blue spiritual power was very active, and it seemed that it could transform at any time. But it couldn't move forward at the edge of transformation. There's only 1 day left. Wan Er's senior sister is coming back. Once she comes back, she will never allow Wan Er to reveal the secret of the Twin Trees Garden to me. But I won't have this opportunity by then. Lin Zhan was a little impatient, but the more impatient he was, the harder it was for him to comprehend. Time passed even faster. Soon, another 20 hours had passed. There were less than 10 minutes left until the deadline of 3 days. No, my mind is in a mess. Lin Jun took a deep breath. He realized that he had made a mistake. He couldn't face it with a calm mind. Too much emphasis on honor and disgrace was a very problematic state of mind. After so many years of cultivation, Lin Jun's self-control was very strong. He quickly returned to his normal state of mind. At this moment, a voice sounded in his mind. Lin Jun, you did well this time. Ah, this voice was like the morning bell and the evening drum, pounding heavily on Lin Jun's heart. How long had it been? He didn't know how long it had been since he heard this voice. But this voice had long been engraved in his soul, and he would never forget it. On the star of divine punishment, during his extreme tempering, it was this voice that had guided him. In the end, he had comprehended something and completed that shocking reversal. Lin Jun didn't expect to hear this voice again today. Senior, it's you. Lin Jun, why did you choose this tree? Lin Jun slightly closed his eyes. After thinking for a moment, he replied, there are two trees here. One is dead, and the other is alive. I feel that under the living tree, I can better feel the vitality of this place. It will be helpful for my spiritual power to advance. Is that so? Then open your eyes and take a look. Lin Jun opened his eyes. He was immediately shocked. This was because he saw that the dead tree opposite him had at some point been glowing with vitality. Its leaves were green. When he raised his head again, he was even more shocked to discover that the tree he had been sitting on had lost all its leaves. Its branches were completely dehydrated. It looked dead. This scene greatly affected Lin Jun. Why was it that when he came under the living tree had died, and the dead tree had come back to life? Could it be that his choice from the beginning was wrong? As if seeing Lin Jun's doubts, the voice continued. Lin Jun, you don't have much time left. If you were given another chance to choose again, would you still choose this place? Lin Jun immediately stood up. Of course, there wouldn't be any enlightenment under a dead tree. He wanted to go to a place full of vitality. But the moment he stood up, a light flashed in his mind. Life, death, withering, prosperity, decline. He sat down once again. Senior, I won't move. I'll choose this place. Oh, why is that? I feel that the concept of the two swaying trees is a reincarnation cycle. Prosperity is bound to decline. To live is to walk towards death. Death is also a form of rebirth. There is no true life, and there is no true death. If I go to a place of life, there will still be death. If I go to a place of death, there will still be rebirth. In that case, it doesn't matter where I go. I'll stay here. The voice paused for a moment before saying, Lin Jun, I'm very happy that you can understand this logic. Only by understanding this point can you be qualified to comprehend the concept of the Twin Trees Garden. Congratulations on passing. Rumble. At that moment, the tree behind Lin Jun once again glowed with vitality from its death. A wisp of green aura bloomed. It bloomed above Lin Jun's head and also bloomed in Lin Jun's mind. It was the aura of emerald brilliance. Lin Jun's spiritual energy blob was originally a pure azure color, as pure as the sky. But at that moment, the core had turned emerald green. This life force was so strong that the fine lines spread out, adding a lot of life force to the blue sky. Ka. Rays of emerald brilliance's aura appeared. Lin Jun's accumulation over the years finally bloomed at that moment. The azure spear in the divine infant's hand had also turned emerald green. Its armor had also turned emerald green. The emerald green aura spread. In just a short while, it had covered 20% of Lin Jun's spiritual energy blob. It was only 20% of the transformation, but Lin Jun felt that his spiritual energy had more than doubled. I've reached it. I finally reached the level of a god. Emerald brilliance's aura. Lin Jun was overjoyed. Over the past 100 years, he had accumulated countless herbs and divine stones. The divine stones could help him cultivate again after he became a god. The herbs were for him to use after his spiritual energy had advanced. However, his spiritual energy had been unable to advance for a long time, so the herbs were useless. Now that he had finally broken through, with his identity as a god-level alchemist, Lin Jun was confident that he could cultivate to the pinnacle of emerald brilliance. The pinnacle of emerald brilliance would definitely be able to break Snow White's soul lock. In his joy, Lin Jun did not forget to thank the voice. Senior, thank you for your advice. Lin Jun will never forget it. May I know Senior's name? Lin Jun would like to express his gratitude in person. Lin Jun, if fate wills it, we'll meet again for the third time. That voice only said a few simple words, and then it went silent. Lin Jun was enlightened. He had received help from this person twice, which was enough to prove that they were fated. But who was this person? Lin Jun was not sure at all. If such a person did not want to reveal his identity, then he would not be able to find out no matter how hard he tried. With the advancement of his spiritual energy, it was time for him to meditate in the Twin Trees Garden. Feng Qingluan's aura appeared. When she saw Lin Jun's situation, she immediately exclaimed in surprise. "Oh my God, Lin Jun, you really did it. You're amazing. However, my senior sister is coming back. I can't say too much to you. Take care of yourself. Luaner, take care." The illusion in the heavenly realm dissipated. The next moment, Lin Jun opened his eyes. He had returned to the Jingxin sect. After the advancement of his spiritual energy, Lin Jun's seclusion, this time, could end. The next step was to quickly cultivate his spiritual energy. At the same time, he had to find a new candidate to guard the Holy Land. He did not know if anyone had appeared in the Holy Land of Fallen Star in the past 100 years. When he was about to ask Chris, he suddenly had a thought. Chapter 1075. To enter the sacred land of Meteorfall Lake, one had to go through the teleportation gate. Then, someone had to stop the spaceship or ride a magical beast or a dolphin to enter the Picking Stars Island. Such a forceful intrusion might not happen even once in 1,000,000,000,000 years. But since they dared to barge into Meteorfall Lake, they must have bad intentions. In the primordial realm, Lin Jun could not think of anyone with such guts. His spiritual power that had reached the level of Jade, Ray scanned it. Lin Jun found this spaceship strange. He had never seen such a shape and style in the primordial realm, and it looked like its performance was very good. The origin of this spaceship was very suspicious. Lin Jun decided to take a look first. No matter what his origin was, there was no way he could barge into Meteorfall Lake. If the 4 sacred lands of martial arts could allow anyone to barge in, then this sacred land would become a joke. Indeed, this spaceship was like a headless fly. After circling the foggy area of Meteorfall Lake for more than an hour, it finally gave up on this reckless behavior. "Young master, this sacred land is a little strange. Our spaceship can travel tens of thousands of kilometers in a second if we accelerate, but we can't break through the fog. We can't find the legendary Picking Stars Island at all." Another subordinate added, "That's right. No one paid any attention to us. Could it be that no one noticed our arrival?" Pampas shook his head. "It's impossible that they didn't notice us. It can only mean that they didn't plan to receive us." Preposterous. We came from the Witch Galaxy. Coming to this sacred land of Meteorfall Lake is giving them face. In such a desolate place, we usually don't even come when they want to invite us. Now that we're here, they're avoiding us. "Young master, we should teach them a lesson." Pampas shook his head slightly. "Maybe they don't know our identity. How about this? Send a signal. Pay attention to your attitude." One subordinate immediately started to operate and quickly sent out a set of signals. This kind of radio signal was very easy to capture. Lin Jun quickly received it. "Meteorfall Lake Guard. We're from the Pampas family from the Witch Galaxy's luminous city. We want to replenish some godstones here to power the spaceship. Please reply quickly." The signal was sent out 3 times. The other people in the Fallen Star Lake also received the message, but they didn't care about it. What Witch Galaxy? Where is the Witch Galaxy located? Never heard of it. In this day and age, there were really all kinds of people. To actually dare to come to Fallen Star Lake to ask for divine stones, he was probably a fool. Moreover, this kind of thing would be handled by the upper echelons of the Holy Land. They didn't need to care. After receiving the transmitted signal, Lin Jun finally knew the origin of the other party. Sure enough, they were from the Witch Galaxy. Seeing the other party's attitude, Lin Jun decided to meet him. However, he couldn't let them enter the Holy Land. Lin Jun appeared in the foggy area. When Lin Jun appeared, the eyes of Pampas, who had been standing in front of the control panel of the spaceship, lit up. They're here. Stay behind and guard the holy land of Meteor Lake. But after seeing Lin Jun, Pampas frowned. Why is he at the peak of the Godstone stage? His two subordinates also looked at each other. This didn't seem right. According to what they knew, the ones left behind in the Holy Land were at least lesser gods, but what was going on with the peak god-level stone in front of them? Young Master, could it be that this isn't the one left behind? Pampas shook his head. No, he's the one left behind. This person should be called Lin Jun. It's just that I haven't looked up his information in detail. After all, we don't have much information here. Then how do you know he's Lin Jun, young master? Because in the starry sky, I saw a space mining machine. The body of the mining machine was painted with this person's poster, as well as a slogan. It said, Fallen Star Lake Guard Lin Jun, guiding us through the darkness. His two subordinates were speechless for a moment. The door of the spaceship opened, and a voice came out. Mr. Lin Jun, please enter. Lin Jun could clearly sense that there were three lesser gods here, but he wasn't afraid of anything. He stepped directly into the spaceship. Pampas looked at Lin Jun with shining eyes. He reached out his hand. Mr. Lin Jun, you are amazing. Your arrival is just as surprising. Haha, please sit. Lin Jun and Pampas sat down facing each other, while the other two lesser gods stood behind Pampas. Mr. Lin Jun, I'm very happy that you've come out to receive us. I know that my arrival is rather presumptuous, but you should know that without Godstones, my spaceship won't be able to travel very far. And here on the surface of the primordial realm, Godstones are a rare commodity. I didn't know who else I could find here, so I came to Fallen Star Lake. Lin Jun asked, May I know how you came to the surface of the primordial realm? Wormhole. The sudden appearance of a wormhole disrupted our plans, forcing us to come here. Lin Jun nodded. Then where are you going? Pampas shook his head slightly. Mr. Lin Jun, this has nothing to do with you. I only hope that you can sell us some Godstones, and then we'll leave. We didn't come here to cause trouble, and we don't want trouble to find us. Lin Jun smiled. Godstones aren't a big problem, but I'm very curious about your world. That place is still a blank slate to me. I want to understand some things. You can treat it as a chat between friends, and tell me about those things. Pampas' underling behind him snorted coldly. Who do you think you are? A mere peak godstone, ant-like guy. You think you're fit to be called friends with our young master? His words were very rude, and also very harsh. A simple sentence was enough to show the contempt these people had for the life of the primordial realm. Although the words were unpleasant to hear, Lin Jun was able to understand. Those two underlings were fine, but Lin Jun sensed an unbelievably powerful life force from this Pampas. Lin Jun had now mastered the indestructible tyrant body, but the life force aura of this indestructible tyrant body was actually slightly inferior to the other parties. It wasn't that Lin Jun had never seen a lower god, but it was his first time seeing such a powerful lower god. Obviously, this person had trained in some special technique. Or perhaps it was a training method that Lin Jun could not understand at the moment. This aroused his great interest. Moreover, the strong looked down on the weak. This was not something incomprehensible in the first place. The world of warriors had always been like this. But now, Lin Jun represented the holy land of Fallen Star Lake. Naturally, he could not allow this underling to humiliate him. His gaze cold, Lin Jun's mental power directly locked onto this person. Repeat what you said just now. This underling wanted to say something, but he suddenly saw the emerald light in Lin Jun's eyes flash like the sun. It made him speechless for a moment. Emerald ray power. Pampas, who had been as steady as Mount Tai, suddenly had a change in expression. Although Pampas had never thought of bullying Lin Jun, as the successor of a clan, Pampas had an extremely high opinion of himself. He had seen many people from the primordial realm who had entered the Demonist galaxy. But the outside world of the primordial realm and the Demonist galaxy were two completely different worlds. Those major figures who could call the wind and summon the rain in the primordial realm were nothing more than minor figures at the bottom of the pyramid in the Demonis galaxy. If they did well, they could become mercenaries. If they didn't, even surviving was a problem. Even if they were deities at the Demonis galaxy, they were nothing at all. There was a huge difference between the gods. Take mental power, for example. Azure Ray and Emerald Ray was a dividing line. Without Emerald Ray level mental power, one would be trash in a certain galaxy, unless one was extremely strong in other aspects. Even Pampas, who had been heavily nurtured by his clan and had broken through to become a deity on his own, was definitely an expert amongst those of the same level. But now he only had early Emerald Ray level mental power. And although his two subordinates were lower gods, their mental power had always been stuck at peak Azure Ray level and would probably continue to be stuck there. But who would have thought that this mere peak Divine Stone level warrior in front of him actually had Emerald Ray level mental power, and it didn't seem to be any weaker than his? This was something he had never seen before. Indeed, to be able to become a guard of the sacred land, he was no ordinary genius. His original contempt was also retracted at this moment. Pampas immediately shouted, "Moses, don't be rude." Lin Jun's mental power hypnosis dissipated at Pampas' soft shout, allowing the servant called Moses to wake up. His clothes were immediately drenched in sweat. Moses bowed to Pampas. "Thank you, young master." He didn't dare to continue speaking. His gaze didn't even dare to land on Lin Jun. Waves of shock rose in his heart. This person actually had the strength of the Jadeite light. This was unimaginable. With this level of mental power, even when facing a lower god like himself, this person was in an undefeatable position. Pampas smiled at Lin Jun. "Mr. Lin Jun, I also feel that we can talk. I'm like friends." Lin Jun also smiled back. "All right then, I have a question in my heart. Would Mr. Pampas please answer it for me?" Please speak. I'll tell you everything I know." "Then Mr. Pampas, may I ask what's up with the life force aura on your body?" Pampas was taken aback, then laughed bitterly. "As expected, you asked such a question. But even if you know, it's probably useless. Because this is the technique I train in. You won't be able to find it in the primordial realm unless you go to the Witch Galaxy." "What technique?" "This technique is rather rare in the Witch Galaxy. It's a technique to raise one's life genes. The more one raises one's life genes, the stronger one's battle prowess will be. But only after breaking through and becoming a god can one cultivate it." "Oh, then how can one obtain such a technique in the Witch Galaxy?" "There are many ways to do that. I need to tell you about the Witch Galaxy in detail." Looking at Lin Jun, listening quietly, Pampas suddenly realized that it wouldn't be easy for him to obtain these god stones. Chapter 1076. Listening to Pampas's explanation, Lin Jun had some understanding of the outside world. Life gene level, this was the main point of cultivation for gods. Of course, this was limited to those who broke through and became gods themselves. Those who became gods using god crystals could not cultivate life genes. To cultivate life genes, one must first have a cultivation method. It wasn't just the genes that could be cultivated. Spiritual power could also be cultivated. Emerald spiritual power was already at the peak under normal circumstances, but after cultivating a secret method, spiritual power could be raised to a higher level. Listening to Pampas's explanation, Lin Jun felt that he had a direction for his future cultivation. "Brother Lin, I see that your star power has reached an extremely high level. It's over 10 billion. Pampas looked at Lin Jun with bright eyes. As a lower god who broke through, his eyes were like torches. He could easily see Lin Jun's depth. Lin Jun nodded slightly. This was something he was very proud of. Pampas also sighed. "It's too rare. With your strength, even in the Witch Galaxy, you're definitely worthy of the title of genius. In the Witch Galaxy, anyone who has 10 billion star power before becoming a god is someone who is heavily nurtured." Lin Jun was stunned. He did not expect that there would be someone who had 10 billion star power before becoming a god. Seeming to have seen through Lin Jun's thoughts, Pampas waved his hand. "You don't have to worry. There are very, very few people like this. Even I, who was nurtured by my family, only had 9 billion star power when I was at the peak of Godstone. There are not many people who can reach my level, let alone 10 billion. Lin Jun thought about it. In the ruler's world, everything was different from the primordial realm. It was understandable that there were outstanding geniuses, so he did not dwell on this matter. Mr. Pampas, the number of godstones you want is not small. Pampas sighed. That's right. We made a miscalculation this time. We could have reached the supply point directly, but we encountered a wormhole midway and took a wrong path. If we don't have enough godstones, returning to the Witch Galaxy will be an extravagant hope. Lin Jun had many godstones after the Battle of Heavenfire, but it was impossible for him to give them away for free. Then I wonder what Mr. Pampas has in exchange? Pampas thought for a moment. Why don't I give you some money? You will need money when you head to the Witch Galaxy in the future. The currency of the primordial realm is not usable in certain galaxies. You will need to exchange it for our currency. I will exchange it for you at a price one level higher than the market price. How about that? Lin Jun smiled and shook his head. Although I need money, it won't be of much help to me at the moment. Let's do something else. This supreme treasure? Lin Jun shook his head again. What he needed was a cultivation method that could make him stronger. Pampas took a deep breath. Brother Lin, if you need a cultivation technique, I don't recommend that you exchange it from me. Although I have cultivation techniques here, they aren't top-notch. If you practice them, you might regret it. Then does Mr. Pampas have any top-grade items? Pampas thought for a moment. I have a top-level technique for refining souls and cloning. If Brother Lin is interested, you can try it. As he spoke, Pampas took out 2 secret manuals. The so-called secret manuals were actually chips that needed to be analyzed by artificial life. This is a secret manual for refining souls. It's called Soul Guard. It cultivates soul power. The other is the elemental cloning technique. The stronger the soul power, the more clones you can cultivate and become stronger. Pampas smiled. Brother Lin, if you can't find a successor in the Holy Land, you'll have to stay here forever. I think you might as well refine a powerful clone and take your place to guard the Holy Land. Wouldn't that be better? Lin Jun was stunned for a moment, then suddenly came to his senses. Normally, when a martial artist refined a clone, that clone had to be by his side as the main battle force. But if he could refine a second clone, then wouldn't he be able to let the clone stay and take his place? Once this thought appeared, it was somewhat uncontrollable. He really needed these 2 secret manuals. Brother, the godstones you gave me can only be exchanged for 1 secret manual. If you want 2, then you'll have to pay more. It depends on what you can take out. Pampas wasn't a fool and wouldn't let Lin Jun take advantage of him for nothing. But he didn't think that Lin Jun would be able to take out something that would catch his eye. He didn't have high hopes. Lin Jun raised his hand, and a small bottle appeared in his palm. There are 5 pills in here. Each of them can bring the dead back to life and recover instantly. I wonder if they can be exchanged for another secret manual? Pills that can bring the dead back to life. Pampas was slightly surprised. Such pills existed in the Witch Galaxy and were indeed more expensive. But he had never seen one that could bring the body back to life instantly. Taking a look, Pampas was someone who knew his stuff, and his expression changed greatly. Heavenly Spirit Fruit. That's right. The golden pill has the Heavenly Spirit Fruit. It should be my original creation. Brother Lin is also an alchemist? A god-level alchemist, just barely passable. Pampas couldn't help but size up Lin Jun for a long time. A god-level alchemist is a rare talent in the Witch Galaxy. Looks like I've underestimated you. Then can we make a deal? Pampas nodded. We can make a deal. But if Brother Lin comes to the Witch Galaxy in the future, you must come to my house as a guest. There's still plenty of time for us brothers. Lin Jun nodded in agreement. He had to go to the Witch Galaxy. There was no harm in making friends with Pampas. The 2 of them quickly completed the transaction, and Lin Jun obtained the 2 secret manuals. Pampas hesitated. Brother, these 2 secret manuals aren't easy to cultivate. The requirements are harsh. If you feel that it's impossible, don't force yourself. I can provide you with some that are more suitable for you. No need. This is good enough. It's them. Pampas nodded. After keeping the God Stone, he, who was eager to return home, did not linger and directly bid farewell to Lin Jun. Seeing the spaceship leave the fallen star lake, Lin Jun also returned to the meditation house. This time, he had provided Pampas with a few million godstones. This had almost emptied Lin Jun's net worth. Back in the Heavenly Fire continent, Lin Jun had provided godstones to the surface races. These godstones had been collected by him in the later battles. Now, he was almost penniless, but Lin Jun didn't feel bad. He could earn more godstones, but these secret manuals were what he urgently needed. After returning to the meditation house, Lin Jun greeted his family and said that he was going to go into seclusion to cultivate again. His family was very understanding. After so many years, everyone was used to cultivating. They also wanted to break through to the peak of the Godstone level and absorb the divine crystals as soon as possible. They were even busier than Lin Jun. After explaining the matters of the Holy Land, Lin Jun officially closed the meditation house. Chapter 1077. Soul Guard referred to a secret manual on soul force cultivation. If there was one thing that Lin Jun was most proud of and had helped him the most in his cultivation, it would be his soul power. His soul had once passed through a black hole, and it was incomparably tough. He could endure any kind of pain, and no hardship could break his soul. However, he knew too little about the soul. After letting Crazy analyze the chip of Soul Guard, the chip became useless, and the secret manual appeared in the dimensional universe. The first paragraph piqued Lin Jun's interest. A true powerhouse must have a strong soul. Lin Jun agreed with this statement. If one's soul force wasn't strong enough, it would be impossible to reach the peak. Without a strong soul, he would have died 100 times over. Soul force is the source of all cultivation. It doesn't directly reflect combat power, but it has endless uses. The soul is a consciousness energy body. It has willpower and perception. It is made up of 4 levels of dark matter. It is divided into gravitational neutrinos, weak wave neutrinos, superquarks, and superelectrons. The more active the dark matter is at each level, the stronger the soul force. Before a soul cultivates, dark matter has a basic value. The higher the basic value, the greater the future cultivation achievements. Cultivators can use artificial intelligence to test their soul force and make a rating. There is also a data table in the dimensional universe. It was a reference for each level of martial artist's soul force. An ordinary person's level 4 dark matter value was 1. Once they died, their soul force would dissipate. A martial artist's soul force would gradually become stronger as their strength increased. The stronger the soul force, the more beneficial it was for cultivation. Lin Jun immediately asked Crazy to test his soul force. In the process, he looked at the elemental doppelganger technique. Lin Jun's cultivation of elemental power was almost perfect. Among them, Lin Jun had already cultivated the ice element to its strongest state. As for the fire and light elements, Lin Jun's cultivation had also reached a considerable level. With soul force as the foundation and elemental power as support, he could condense an elemental doppelganger. This type of elemental doppelganger was different from the previous doppelganger. Once cultivated, it would grow with the main body and could be borrowed. This kind of doppelganger even had a true independent consciousness. It was a complete life form that was one with the main body, yet not one. Lin Jun was overjoyed when he saw that his doppelganger could return and borrow power. Once the elemental doppelganger was successfully cultivated, it would definitely become a powerful combat force. Lin Jun could even use the divinity crystal to make his doppelganger become a god. Just by being able to borrow strength, it would provide Lin Jun with a powerful supporting force. The stronger the clone was, the stronger the main body would be. As for the creation of the clone, it would be carried out in the god realm. During this period of time, the main body would still need to communicate with the elemental energy of the outside world. It would also be quite difficult to cultivate. Furthermore, the creation of each elemental doppelganger required the separation of soul power. This required the main body to constantly cultivate the soul guard to make up for it. These two cultivation methods complemented each other. When the elemental doppelganger was successfully nurtured, the strength of the doppelganger would depend on the strength of the elemental energy at the time of nurturing. The strongest doppelganger would even have strength close to the original body. Lin Jun now needed a doppelganger that could replace him to guard the meteor lake. Just as Lin Jun was learning the elemental doppelganger technique, Lin Jun's soul power was detected. Lin Jun's soul power and level 4 dark matter values were 188, 175, 164, and 150 respectively. This value was considered very high. Every time a doppelganger was nurtured, it required a level 4 dark matter value of over 100. Ordinary people would not be able to possess a level 4 dark matter value of over 100 without cultivation. In other words, people who did not cultivate would not even be able to create an elemental doppelganger. This should be related to my soul passing through the black hole, which allowed me to possess such a high base value. Even if I don't cultivate the soul guard now, I still have the strength to nurture the first doppelganger. However, if I want to nurture the second doppelganger, I'll have to raise my level 4 dark matter value to 200. The cultivation method of the soul guard had to be carried out in the virtual world. The origin of the name soul guard came from the phrase soul guard abandonment. The abandonment of the soul guard referred to a person's body. However, when a person's mind was in a trance, they would not be able to stay true to their heart and might even die. During cultivation, a person's soul would have to withstand an illusory attack, allowing the soul to stay true to its heart and achieve the goal of training. The illusory realm was a high platform called the Sky Connecting Platform. The soul consciousness would climb the platform. With every level, the level 4 dark matter value would increase greatly. Every level could increase the level 4 dark matter value by 10. Lin Jun did not immediately start cultivating the soul guard. He first had to determine what kind of elemental doppelganger he would nurture. Lin Jun was proficient in many elements. Light, thunder, ice, and fire were his first choices. However, if he wanted to cultivate an elemental doppelganger, he would have to grasp the true essence of the elements. The method to test if he had grasped the true essence of the elements was very simple. That was to transform his body. Only by transforming his body into an element could he be considered to have truly grasped it. Otherwise, even if he resonated with all the elements, he would not be considered to have grasped it. Lin Jun first tested the fire. The black hole beast's attribute was fire. It was a variant of the fire Qilin. In addition, Lin Jun had many years of alchemy. His control of fire could be said to be extremely high. He wanted to test if he could nurture the fire element. According to the method of transforming his body, Lin Jun's mind moved. A powerful flame force began to rise. Lin Jun's body twisted a few times. A layer of flame appeared on the surface of his body, but it soon calmed down. Failed. I have not grasped the true essence of the fire element. Lin Jun had already expected this result. His understanding of fire was not enough. Even if he was a fire Qilin, even if he had the bloodline of the fire phoenix, it was still not enough. If fire doesn't work, then let's try light. With a thought, a mass of holy light rose from the surface of his body. Lin Jun was like a powerful light source, incomparably dazzling. However, he still cannot transform into light. Let's try lightning. A burst of lightning jumped. Lin Jun's body twisted a few times before gradually calming down. None of them work. Fire and lightning have all failed. Then there's no need to test wind, earth, and wood. My understanding of these elements is not as good as the other elements. The only element I can try is the ice element. Lin Jun had already grasped absolute zero. He was confident that his understanding of ice surpassed the other elements. If this was not enough, he really did not know what could. With a thought, Lin Jun began to transform. Biting cold air spread in the room, and all movement in the surroundings stopped. All objects lost their vitality and vitality at this moment. It was as if the space had been frozen. Lin Jun's body also turned into an ice sculpture at this moment. From the outside to the inside, it began to gradually become transparent. It's almost done. It's almost done. As long as it all condenses, it will prove that I have a complete understanding of the meaning of ice. However, just as his heart was about to melt, Lin Jun felt a trace of stagnation. That's not right. I still don't fully understand. What am I missing? I have clearly grasped absolute zero. Lin Jun was suddenly a little anxious. His gaze moved, instinctively wanting to see something, hoping to give him some inspiration. Outside the window, in the river, a golden dragon seemed to be unable to withstand the cold air and rushed out of the water. Splash! A splash of water surged. Some of the water near the window automatically condensed into ice beads and fell to the ground with tinkling sounds. Seeing this scene, Lin Jun's mind flashed. That's right, water. I was too stubborn. I was so focused on the transformation of ice that I forgot that ice is water, and water is ice. They are originally one. With a laugh, Lin Jun's body twisted and suddenly turned into a cloud of water mist, rushing into the river outside the window. Wherever his thought passed, the river water was stirred up into a whirlpool. A water dragon appeared in the air and directly chased after the fleeing golden dragon. The golden dragon could not understand why the water dragon appeared. It panicked and wanted to dodge, but it could not. Gradually, its animal instincts made it feel a sense of closeness. Its slender body tangled with the water dragon. The golden dragon seemed very happy as it recognized Lin Jun. Splash! The water dragon danced again and turned into an ice dragon. Its entire body was sparkling and translucent, shining brightly under the sun. After circling twice in the air, the ice dragon turned into a qilin, standing on the water surface and roaring at the sky. The surrounding animals followed Lin Jun and cried out in unison. They could all feel Lin Jun's happy mood. Lin Jun had finally grasped the essence of ice and the true essence of the water element. He could use the realm of the gods to nurture his first elemental doppelganger. With a thought, Lin Jun returned to the Jingxin sect. The next moment, he appeared in the realm of the gods. The continent in the realm of the gods had already taken shape. The realm of the gods, with a diameter of 10 light years, could be said to be boundless. Lin Jun floated in the sky above the realm of the gods. He wanted to carry out the first transformation here, to create his first elemental doppelganger. In the center of the realm of the gods, there was an ocean area. The ocean was vast and mighty, with a diameter of about 1,000,000 kilometers. This was much bigger than the Pacific Ocean on Earth. However, Lin Jun, who was standing in the air, shook his head slightly. No, it's too small. The doppelganger nurtured by such a small ocean will definitely not be strong. I need an even bigger ocean. The ocean in the realm of the gods could not be expanded casually. It needed Lin Jun's main body to guide and assimilate more water to expand it. All of this required Lin Jun to spend a long time doing it personally. There might not be other things here, but there was a lot of water because this was the Fallen Star Lake. Lin Jun immediately teleported and appeared on the surface of the lake. Chapter 1078. Fallen Star Lake was the largest water surface in the entire primordial realm. The water surface was unbelievably large. A star falling into it was like a stone falling into the Atlantic Ocean. The depth of the ocean could no longer be measured in meters, but in kilometers, star miles, or even light years. Lin Jun's main body entered Fallen Star Lake and began to sink. Like a missile launched underwater, the speed of his descent was astonishing. Schools of fish constantly appeared around him. As he dived deeper, the ordinary schools of fish turned into schools of deep-sea fish. The deeper he went, the more bizarre the aquatic creatures became. Giant sharks that were hundreds of meters long, octopuses that stretched out their legs like small mountains, jellyfish that were bigger than houses, and the occasional flood dragon that overturned rivers and seas appeared in Lin Jun's vision from time to time. However, these creatures did not dare to approach Lin Jun. They instinctively knew to avoid existences that were stronger than them. Lin Jun's current strength was relatively strong in the entire primordial realm. After diving down a few million kilometers, Lin Jun stopped. The creatures that lived here were all deep-sea microorganisms. It was very difficult to see large creatures. He sat cross-legged in the water and allowed his body to sink slowly. To breed a clone, the first thing he needed to do was to connect the waters of Fallen Star Lake with the waters of the heavenly realm. With a thought, the heavenly realm opened. Under the influence of Lin Jun's thoughts, an invisible passage opened between the two realms. The water of Fallen Star Lake seemed to have entered a huge hole and poured into the heavenly realm. In the heavenly realm, the sky above Lin Jun's earth core lake seemed to have opened up, and the heavenly river hung upside down. The turbulent lake water rushed in with a rumble. The amount of water entering was equivalent to a daunting lake every second. With the huge amount of water entering, the lake shore in Lin Jun's body also began to expand. Lin Jun ignored this for the time being. Next, he had something very important to do. That was to strip the soul power. This was the most crucial process. To breed a clone, one had to strip the soul of the main body and then cultivate the soul guard to replenish the lost soul power. Each stripping required 100 units of each of the 4 dark matter elements. If the dark matter did not meet this requirement, then the stripping of the soul would be courting death. The soul would be turned into ashes, and there would be no chance of resurrection. This process is a rather dangerous one. Fortunately, I'm currently at the bottom of the Fallen Star Lake. There shouldn't be any calamity. Let's start. With a thought, the soul stripping began. Lin Jun's originally powerful soul force began to forcibly split apart. A burst of indescribable pain assaulted him. Even though Lin Jun had experienced countless hardships, this kind of pain was still unbearable. His body was trembling, and the cold sweat on his body was emitting white smoke in the lake water. He was in so much pain that he felt like he was going to die. Fortunately, this process didn't take long, only a minute. Otherwise, the pain would be even worse than the soul passing through a black hole. A minute later, Lin Jun's entire body collapsed. His body was extremely weak. More than half of his soul had been split, and the fact that he was still alive proved that his willpower was strong enough. Elemental doppelganger. This kind of pain is simply unbearable. Fortunately, I persevered through it. The huge pain was exchanged for a huge harvest. Lin Jun's stripped soul carried a dense amount of water elements and was currently forming a new life in the Earth's core lake of the heavenly realm. The water vapor in the Earth's core lake began to converge, forming a new body. This body also had meridians, bones, blood, and muscles. But more than that, it was light and agile water vapor. This process is also very important. The more water vapor is gathered, the stronger the new elemental doppelganger will be. With a thought, Lin Jun formed a black hole above the doppelganger's head. The water vapor in the surroundings began to rapidly compress and converge. The water in the Earth's core lake began to shrink rapidly, as if it was evaporating. It was about to dry up and reveal the bottom of the lake. Open the entrance to the heavenly realm a little wider. The entrance between the heavenly realm and the Fallen Star Lake suddenly expanded. If one entered a daunting lake every second before, then one entered a southern sea every second now. Even so, it was still unable to support the water elemental doppelganger. After going through the extreme compression of the black hole, the amount of water required for this doppelganger was simply too much. My astral power erupt. Open it to the limit. Forcefully supporting his weak body, Lin Jun decisively opened his domain of divinity. After increasing his astral power by 70%, it directly broke through the 20 billion mark and reached 20. For billion, with the support of such a huge amount of astral power, the entrance between the two worlds expanded again. Previously, one entered a southern sea every second, but now one entered an Indian Ocean every second. A huge amount of water flooded in and finally supplied the water elemental doppelganger. Countless streams of water turned into water droplets and entered the doppelganger's body, causing the doppelganger's body to gradually take shape and its face to become clearer. The water elemental doppelganger is not limited by size. The bigger the body, the better. After the first successful condensation, it still needs to be nurtured slowly in the future. But it's best if the first condensation is bigger. This way, it will grow faster in the future. On the surface of the Earth's core lake, the new Lin Jun's body grew bigger and bigger. 50 meters, 100 meters, 500 meters, 3,000 meters. Like a water giant, this body began to grow. 10,000 meters. A bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, and the water elemental doppelganger finally opened its eyes. I am water. I am rivers, lakes, and seas. I am Linjun. The water elemental doppelganger's body shone with starlight, and its realm began to soar rapidly. Warrior, war god, star core condensation, meteor stage, comet stage, satellite stage. Each level of advancement was from fast to slow, because the accumulation of each process was different. The higher the realm, the more water elements needed to accumulate. Linjun's body and the water elemental doppelganger looked at each other across the entrance between the two worlds. The water elemental doppelganger bowed to Linjun. Thank you for nurturing me. Linjun returned the bow. It's okay. You are me. The water elemental doppelganger stopped talking and focused on absorbing the water vapor. The doppelganger that was nurtured was a completely new life with its own independent thoughts. However, it wouldn't grow to the level of Linjun's body immediately. It still needed a process of growth. When it grew to the level of Linjun's body, it could replace Linjun's body and become the guard of the fallen star lake sacred land. If Linjun was willing, the water elemental doppelganger could temporarily return to the body and bring new star power to Linjun. However, Linjun didn't plan to do that. If his body left the fallen star lake, the water elemental doppelganger couldn't leave. He couldn't leave an empty city here. Seeing that the water elemental doppelganger could cultivate on its own, Linjun heaved a sigh of relief. Next, he would start to cultivate Soul Guard to replenish the soul power he had lost. He would also walk up the sky-reaching platform and strive to nurture a second water elemental doppelganger as soon as possible. He didn't know how many water elemental doppelganger he could nurture, but the more he nurtured, the stronger his body would be. However, he still needed to grasp the true essence of the elements. This was also a difficult process. In the heavenly realm, the shore of the geocentric lake had expanded to 5 million kilometers, and it was still expanding. During the expansion stage, Linjun couldn't leave the fallen star lake for the time being. He still needed to replenish the water here. According to the cultivation method of Soul Guard, Linjun began his first cultivation. The cultivation of Soul Guard doesn't require the deliberate recovery of lost soul power. As long as one cultivates normally, the lost soul power will be replenished. The improvement of the 4 types of dark matter isn't just an improvement of one's spiritual consciousness. It's also an improvement of one's willpower. Different stages have different levels of willpower. It's fine if one is below the level of God, but if one can break through and become a god on their own, their willpower and soul strength will definitely surpass others. To hone one's willpower and soul strength, one had to walk up the sky-reaching platform in the virtual illusion realm. The sky-reaching platform status in a specific star system was almost comparable to the 33 Heavens Pagoda on the primordial realm surface. Corresponding to the 33 Heavens Pagoda, the sky-reaching platform also had 33 levels. Each level was a great training for one's soul and willpower. However, almost no one in the primordial realm knew about this. In the specific star system of the world of domination, everyone knew about it and had to pass it. In the world of domination, if one didn't cultivate Soul Guard, one's achievements were destined to be limited. Becoming a god wasn't something simple. One had to have a corresponding level of soul and willpower. Otherwise, even if one's strength was sufficient and had abundant divine power, it was impossible to break through and advance. One could only rely on deity crystals. Relying on deity crystals was the worst path. Linjun couldn't take that path. At the very least, his main body would never rely on deity crystals to become a god. At the bottom of the fallen star lake, Linjun's main body activated Soul Guard and entered the virtual world. After entering the virtual world, the pain of Linjun's soul being stripped away disappeared. A high platform rose from the ground in front of him. Standing in front of the high platform, a stone staircase that led upwards appeared in front of him. Just as he was about to ascend the stone staircase, a figure appeared in front of him. The figure looked ordinary, but at the same time extraordinary. It was a virtual character. Welcome to the world of Soul Guard. The stone staircase in front of you is the staircase to the top. Every time you advance to the next level, you have to comprehend the corresponding picture. Comprehending the picture on the first level proves that your soul is strong enough to break through and become a god. The picture in everyone's eyes is different. Every person who succeeds in comprehending it will have different gains. They will all give you great benefits. Now, let's begin. It was a routine introduction, without any emotion. Then, the figure disappeared and a picture appeared in front of him. The picture blocked the staircase to the top. Before Lin Jun comprehended it, the picture wouldn't disappear. Fantasy Tian Luo diagram. When the picture appeared, a dense net of light appeared in front of him. The net of light covered the sky and covered the sun in layers. It looked like it was made up of millions of lines. Countless lines of light formed a spider web. Lin Jun was like a moth in the web, unable to find a way out. Chapter 1079. Hearing these words, Lin Jun couldn't help sucking in a breath of cold air. 6 million lines were drawn with a single stroke. Moreover, there couldn't be any mistakes in the middle. This was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. He stared with wide eyes for a long time. His eyes were sore, but the more he looked, the more dizzy he felt. No, this isn't right. This kind of thing can't be seen with the eyes, but with the soul. Lin Jun's perception was very high. He quickly realized that his method was wrong and immediately changed it. He used his soul to enter the picture and capture the source of the lines. This process required Lin Jun to use his soul strength to deduce and comprehend. 6 million lines. If I deduce them one by one, I might be able to find them at 8 million. But this is the stupidest method. If I'm unlucky, then I might not be able to find the source even after deducing 3 million lines. I'll deduce according to my feelings. Lin Jun believed that he would quickly complete this step. But when it really came to this point, he discovered that this kind of deduction wasn't so simple. He didn't know if other people's breakthroughs were as difficult as this. In short, the difficulty of the picture in front of him wasn't ordinary. There were 3,600,000 lines, and just the first line alone was followed by 3,599,999 changes. Even if he successfully deduced the first line, there were still 3,999,999 variations behind it. If he wanted to take a shortcut, then he would need to enter a state of epiphany. When he felt good, he might be able to instantly draw several lines. But he couldn't always be in a state of epiphany. The soul had to be constantly tempered under a high-intensity operation. This was the way to cultivate soul strength. Lin Jun used a month to deduce the first line. After a month, Lin Jun suddenly had an epiphany. He drew 9 lines in a row. Then, he was stuck for a long time. 3 months later. This is really abnormally difficult. Lin Jun temporarily stopped his deduction and allowed his soul strength to take a breather. I seem to have taken a few detours. Although the deduction had been going on at high speed, Lin Jun kept feeling that he was doing something wrong. The voice within this soul guard seems to be digging a hole for me. This line isn't naturally formed, but when it turns and twists, it doesn't give off the feeling of a pen at all. It's too sharp and fierce. Could it be? Lin Jun's expression suddenly turned cold. He thought of a possibility. Swordplay. These crisscrossing straight lines seemed to have traces of swordsmanship. The voice inside the soul guard said that every picture, every person will gain different insights. What I'm seeing seems to be the trajectory of a sword. Could this be a set of sword trajectories? Lin Jun immediately returned to the dimensional universe and started deducing again. This time, his soul power directly simulated the sword's trajectory. From the first stroke, what he used in his mind was not a brush, but a sword. Swish! Swish! Lin Jun, who had already completed the 15th stroke, was waving his sword at lightning speed. When he reached the 15th stroke, Lin Jun felt like he had to spit it out. Under his high concentration, his soul power was released to the greatest extent. Relying on his intuition, Lin Jun found the correct trajectory among the 6 million lines. Flashes of sword chi were shot out from the void, and lines were formed at lightning speed. Epiphany. Lin Jun was now in a state of epiphany. The sword in his mind was like a hurricane. 100 lines, 500 lines, 3,000 lines, 100,000 lines. This time, he waved his sword continuously for 500,000 times. When Lin Jun's soul power felt like it couldn't hold on any longer, he stopped this deduction. The lines that were originally so densely packed that he couldn't see them clearly finally became a little sparser. As expected, these lines are sword chi. It's a picture of a sword. With this understanding, this kind of boring deduction immediately became lively in Lin Jun's mind. His mentality was different, and he didn't feel that it was tiring anymore. Rest for a while, then continue the deduction. At this stage, Lin Jun knew that this first picture couldn't stump him. As long as he had some patience, within a year, he would definitely complete the breakthrough. Completing the spirit guard had great significance. The increase in soul power had great benefits. As long as his soul strength increased, when his strength reached a certain level in the future, it would be a matter of course. According to Pampas, in a specific star system, many people were stuck at breaking through not because their strength was insufficient, but because their soul strength wasn't strong enough. If their willpower wasn't strong enough, they would naturally be stuck. And Lin Jun's soul was strong. To be able to start learning the Spirit Guard in the Divine Stone stage, it would definitely be a smooth road for him to advance in the future. In the following days, Lin Jun's mentality was calm. The long years of cultivation were already ordinary to him. In 5 months, Lin Jun successfully deduced 1 million lines. In 8 months, Lin Jun deduced 7 million lines. Especially in the later stages, when the lines were getting lesser, the deduction speed continued to increase. In 10 months, Lin Jun had already deduced 3 million lines. In 10 months and 1 day, Lin Jun successfully deduced the first fantasy sky catching diagram. Open for me. With a roar, Lin Jun used the heart sword. 6 million lines of sword chi intersected and shot out at the speed of light. Following the birth of the lines, they were completely compatible with the fantasy sky catching diagram in front of him. With a sword, the inescapable net disappeared. The stone steps to the top appeared in front of Lin Jun. He could go to the second level now. Sky catching sword. Comprehending the first level of the picture not only increased my soul strength, but I also learned a group attack sword technique. With such a sword technique, it would be difficult for the enemy to escape. Achieved. After 10 months of deduction, I've finally completed the first level of the sky catching platform. I can go to the second level now. This also meant that Lin Jun now had the basic requirements to become a low-level deity. As long as his astral power was full, he could break through and become a deity. Of course, Lin Jun wouldn't break through so easily. However, his soul was one step ahead. This was already a fact. After passing the first level, Lin Jun's 4 elements of dark matter were finally upgraded. They were 198, 185, 174, and 160 respectively. Finally, I've improved. If I pass the 4th level, my 4 elements of dark matter will all be upgraded to 200. Maybe then it'll be time to breed a second doppelganger. Continue. The first 6 levels of the sky catching platform correspond to the 6 stages of a low-level deity's soul strength. They are early, middle, late, peak, and limit. If I can pass the second level of the sky catching platform, it means that my soul strength will stabilize at early, low-level deity. Walking along the stone steps to the top of the sky catching platform, Lin Jun came to the entrance of the first level to the second level. As expected, the picture of the second level appeared. The picture of the second level was a torrential rain picture. On the torrential rain picture, there was a boundless wasteland with torrential rain pouring down. The picture was a moving picture with a duration of 5 seconds. Lin Jun was required to find the order of all the raindrops falling in these 5 seconds on this wasteland. This was another perversely difficult requirement. Within 5 seconds, there were 9 million raindrops falling in the wasteland. Finding the order of raindrops was even more difficult than the previous intersecting light rays. Let's take it slow. I'll find order first. One must believe in oneself. Lin Jun wasn't in a hurry. He re-entered the torrential rain picture to comprehend. In the long years that followed, Lin Jun entered a state of deep seclusion. No one knew what Lin Jun was doing, and no one disturbed him. Year after year passed. Flowers withered and bloomed in the meditation house, and the tides of Meteor Lake rose and fell. Batch after batch of geniuses grew, and the battles and killings between warriors continued. Lin Jun stayed in the meditation house. He no longer paid attention to the storms of the outside world and wholeheartedly entered his own cultivation. There were several areas in which he was constantly improving. In the third year of seclusion, Lin Jun comprehended the second picture and entered the third level of the sky split platform. And in this year, Lin Jun also swallowed some mental strength cultivation pills, increasing his mental strength by 10%. The emerald light in his mental strength reached 30%. In the 10 years of seclusion, Lin Jun comprehended the third picture and entered the fourth level of the sky split platform. In these years, Lin Jun's mental strength increased to 45%. At the same time, his water elemental avatar also officially entered the immortal realm. In the 30 years of seclusion, Lin Jun comprehended the fourth picture. At this time, the intensity of his soul once again increased by leaps and bounds, reaching the level of a late low god. If he told others about this result, no one would believe him. And his mental strength also reached 60%. At the same time, his water elemental avatar entered the divine transformation realm. However, cultivating from the fourth level to the fifth level was not that easy. The picture for this level was a thunderstorm. Lin Jun had to determine the degree of activity of the lightning photons within each bolt of lightning and make the correct sequence. Facing the abnormal difficulty of each level, even if Lin Jun was a heaven-warping genius, it was still difficult for him to break through in a short period of time. After a full 100 years, Lin Jun was still stuck on the path from the fourth level to the fifth level. What was worth consoling him was that his mental strength had reached 70% emerald light. He wasn't far from awakening Snow White. It wasn't until the 190th year that Lin Jun could be considered to have made a real breakthrough. After comprehending the picture, Lin Jun's soul strength had reached the pinnacle of a low-level deity. Lin Jun let out a long sigh. He couldn't continue comprehending because he already felt the changes in the divine world. The Earth's core lake in the divine world was about to complete its expansion, and his water elemental avatar had finally reached the divine stone realm. Although it hadn't reached the peak of the divine stone realm, the water elemental avatar could already cultivate on its own. With a star energy of 9 billion, the water elemental avatar was more or less qualified to guard the Holy Land. Lin Jun had been waiting for this day for a long time. He couldn't stay here forever. He still had to pursue a higher world, a wider world.